It's 7 o'clock in Southern California. No rain delays here. And it's time for the Thursday night D-Star Roundtable for September 28th, 2017. This is Mike, N6HKH, your net control. This roundtable is held every Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific Time on XRF-002 Alpha and a constellation of X reflectors, including XRF 310A, XRF 555 Alpha, XLX 212A, and our new dual mode reflector XLX 313 Alpha. This is a technical net dedicated to D-Star and Open Digital Systems. It's a group effort, which means that you have to key up to participate and join in on the discussions that we hope to have tonight. To join in, to join in or start a topic, ask a question, please key up when I call for stations. Please remember, we don't quick key or tailgate here. I will pause regularly to let you key up, and I ask that participating stations do the same. So, one other note, I'm trying to find a way to shorten the introduction, although I don't want to shock anybody, because I know a lot of people, hear the beginning of this and say, hey, time to get a cup of coffee. Well, we're going to continue to cut back on this. I think everybody has heard most of it, but it is important for me to say that we do not take formal check-ins, and, we don't do a roll call. It's just to give us more time to talk digital. Now, Net Control is online at roundtable.tech. That's roundtable, all one word, .tech. Just type that in the address field of your favorite browser. You don't need anything else. And it'll take you to the landing page of the Thursday Night D-Star Roundtable forum board. There, you'll find a real-time chat feature called the Shoutbox. You can use that to contact me as well as to post information relevant to your topic, especially notes and links. We ask that stations that are offering a web address or telling us that we should be looking somewhere on the internet should post that URL or DNS in the Shoutbox so that those listening, an hour later, can take a look at it, rather than me having to repeat it and getting it wrong. So post it if you would like to, and if you feel up to it, you can also create an active link in your Shoutbox post using the tools right above the text entry field. So just roundtable, all one word, .tech, take you right to the forum board. Now the Shoutbox is never lost. We gather it up at the end of the roundtable and move it to the Shoutbox history, which is right above the general roundtable discussion board. Of course, podcast listeners get the Shoutbox downloaded automatically. So tonight, we're going to go right into announcements, stations with announcements. For tonight's roundtable, please key up now. Well, didn't see or hear anything, so the only announcement that I have, which is also from last week, is that PacificCon is coming up October 20, 21, and 22 at the San Ramon Marriott Hotel in San Ramon, California. It's a very popular get-together, and you should put it on your calendar and try to attend at least once in your lifetime. It's well worth it. I haven't heard of anybody throwing any fits as a result of attending it, and usually we get a fair number of reports of new products. It is leaning a little bit more, has been more digital than the traditional Hamfest. At least there seems to be more topics, more forums, and more vendors involved in the digital modes than at others. So we'll look forward to getting some reports from those who attend. All right, any other announcements? We'll take you now. Please key up. All right, nothing seen or heard. If you think of an announcement that you'd like to let us know about, key up and tell me that you're started with your announcement, and we'll be happy to take you on. All right, turning to the Roundtable Forum board, we'd like to go over some of the shout box and other posts and some of the boards that are there. In the shout box, we've already had some activity, including a post regarding Red Cross efforts. In fact, a rather unusual call to amateurs to actually go to Puerto Rico and help the Red Cross out on the I'm safe, health and welfare type stuff. And I thought I'd just pause a moment to see if anyone has anything to add to amateur radio's efforts in Puerto Rico, especially if there's anything happening on D-Star or digital modes. If you'd like to weigh in on this or tell us what you know, please key up now. Alrighty, well, for those interested, the poster who didn't use a call sign, and I have to tell you, we really, really prefer and ask that you post on the shout box. You don't have to register for the Roundtable Forum board, although it's really not a big to do. It actually has several benefits. But if you're going to post in the shout box, please use your call sign. And if you're not licensed, use your first name and just indicate that you're not licensed. I mean, there are people that are SWL fans that listen and participate. Well, they don't participate, but they listen. So you don't have to be licensed. But if you are, please use your call sign. And if you're not, don't try to pretend that you are. And if you are, don't try to pretend you're not. How about that? Also, we've got some posts concerning some stuff that's been scattered about the Yahoo and other groups concerning the XLX reference numbering scheme. I tend to agree with the last posting by K6KD that this is really an issue that probably should not be given much time, only because it appears that the promoters of this particular discussion are not really, well, they're trying to make an issue out of something that doesn't exist and are trying to blame others, and they're just misinformed, I think. I'm not trying to cast, look, I'm not bad-mouthing anybody, but it's hard to argue on or bring up a topic where the premise is misplaced. And I hate to give a voice to a misplaced premise. So, unless someone has a comment on the issue of XRX reflector numbering, and I'll pause now to see if anybody does, but we don't intend to make it a topic. But, the issue is there for you to review. It's been described somewhat in the shout box, and there's all kinds of Yahoo groups that have taken it up, and you can see what the arguments are, pro and con. I'll just pause to see if anybody has a comment on this before we move on. Please key up. Alrighty, nothing there, and that's just as well. But, this is what the shout box is for. No need to, feel obligated to, because you post something that we are going to take it up. On the other hand, if you don't post it, we won't consider it to take it up as a topic. Elsewhere within the Roundtable Forum board, in the general discussions folder or board, if you want to call it, is a post by N7TAE Tom taking issue with some what he believed were some critical comments about QuadNet. As you may remember, we had a speaker, W4WWM, to give us a talk about QuadNet and to introduce some of us to that. And, subsequent to it, there was some discussion on the Constellation about, well, we appreciate hearing from Will, but doggone it, we're not really sure what QuadNet is, and if we're using it, how to use it, do we want to use it? What do I have to do to use it? Do I have to buy a bunch of gear, or is it just there? And Tom N7TAE was kind enough to post a PDF link, if you look at the bottom of his post under general discussions, And let me back this up just a minute here to go get the exact title of the posting. It's why would you ever want, well, I think he meant to say, why would you ever want to use QuadNet? That's the topic title. Is probably a pretty good one. And there, you'll find a link to a document that talks about QuadNet routing, what it does when you think you're using it, when you don't know that you're using it, but you are, and how it facilitates routing. And it's a well done document. It's not too many pages, but it's worth your reading. I'll pause now to see if anybody has any comments about QuadNet or wishes to add to what is a posted discussion. We'll take it now. Please key up.
W4W.
Well, if I wait long enough, somebody tends to key up, hey, well, W4WWN. Go ahead.
Well, good evening. Net Control and the rest of fine, good people, and better yet, amateur radio operators on the net. Yes, Pete, I really appreciate Tom writing that document, and thought it was a really, really good read, and explains very much what we are all about. We do both routing and linking. We just don't frown upon linking the way most people do, and basically support it, but in a way that we operate the routing methods on the QuadNet is more respectful. Uh, and one other note I just wanted to make, and make an emphasis in, is that the group routing is basically what we do, and we kind of like doing that, and one of the key functions I kind of really, really like about it, we don't have to worry about a host file and everybody bumping into each other or think that they're bumping into each other with, something like identity theft as we were reading. I thought it was kind of funny today how we read some of those posts. But we don't seem to right now have those problems in a StarNet group. Basically, just like a talk group, exactly like a DMR talk group or a reflector. But anyway, we don't. One of our differences is that we don't have to worry about a host file. It just does its thing. Everything is already automatically in place with the QuadNet database. And it's a very good read on Tom's PDF file. So I encourage everyone to read it. So you really, really get a good understanding about what we do on the QuadNet. We do both linking and routing. And right now, of course, the network is full of file servers. You may have repeated some of the things I said last week, but it has three forms of type of routing. But the document explains it all, and it's pretty. You might even get a chuckle once you read it all. But with that, I'll turn it back to Net Control, and just want to congratulate Tom on a good write. W4WW.
Indeed, it is worth a read, even if you don't think you're ever going to use QuadNet, or even if you know a fair amount about it. It's always fun to read these things. It's not terribly long. It's not difficult read, and it explains a lot and helps those. I mean, QuadNet isn't just a flight of fancy or some flash in the pan. It's been around for some time. It's there. It does things differently, but it does things. And what it purports to do, it does well. All right, Will, thank you for that. Further comments on QuadNet? Please key up. Alrighty, well, we can always talk about it some more on another date if that so pleases anybody, and we'll be happy to take any other experiences or comments about it. So we appreciate having that post and document available to us. So any follow-up to anything else that was discussed last week or so? We usually pause now to take comments on topics that were perhaps, the presenter found out something new, or there was something different or incorrect that was said and wanted to clean that up, or if you listened to a topic on the one of the recordings of the roundtable, such as the podcast, or you listened to it in some other recorded manner, and you heard a topic and said, "Hey, I'd sure like to chime in on that." This is the opportunity that we give you to follow up and ask questions about or comment on anything that we've presented here on the Thursday Night D-Star Roundtable. So, stations, please key up. Well, nothing there, so we'll see what if we can generate. Well, I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't call for stations on follow-up. It seems like we don't get a lot of response, but then the moment I don't ask for it, we get stations keying up saying, "Hey, how come we can't? How come I wasn't given an opportunity to follow up on something that we talked about last week?" All right. Anybody have any reports from any ham fairs or hamventions? Did you attend one? Would you like to tell us about it? If so, we'll take you now. Please key up. All right. Well, perhaps there wasn't any hamfest of any value that. Well, I shouldn't say that. I got it. Any new YouTube videos or PowerPoint presentations or some website that we should be watching or keeping an eye on that helps us out in understanding D-Star and other digital modes? Please key up and tell us about it.
I got a question about something.
WA9LT.
Well, I'll take that in place of a report. WA9LKZ. Welcome. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wonder if anybody had tried this D-Star decoder software. I guess you can use the dongle in this software and you can decode the D-Star audio out of a GMSK discriminator. I wonder if anybody tried it with the dongle, or anybody have any idea if it'll work with the DV3K?
What software is that? Is there a name? WA4LKZ, go ahead.
Hang on, it just went down. Give me a second.
WA9LTZ.
The name of the software is D-Star Decoder. I think it's shareware you can load off the internet. But you have to use the DV dongle, and this software evidently will connect or send your audio stream out of the radio to the DV dongle, and you can listen to the audio. Go ahead.
Well, let's find out. I haven't heard about it, but let's see if someone else has. Stations, if you know anything about this, I put it to use. What do you think? Please key up. Well, I didn't get anybody to key up. Is this something that is that you found on the internet? Did you download it yourself? I'm trying to see if I can't bring it up right now, but it's under D-Star Decoder, although that brings up a lot of stuff. But is this perhaps some software that's used with a SDR device or anything like that? You know any more about it? WA9LKZ. Go ahead.
Hell no, and I'm trying to find the web address. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe I can get it. Hang on. Oh, good grief. This web address is forever. It was on QSL.net, KB9MWR, projects, DV, D-Star decoder plus dongle. I think if you put D-Star decoder plus DV dongle, you might be able to find it on the web.
All right. Well, the only place I found actually quote unquote D-Star decoder was on dstarinfo.com, and it looks like this is an older post going back to 2008. So I doubt that this is anything current, although I can't say for sure. And then there was a D-Star decoder software Yahoo group, which, well, now I'm going to sign back in. I'm not going to, can't seem to, well, I can't validate whether that group even exists. It just wants me to add, I don't want to add, yeah. Yahoo group sometimes they just log me out and won't let me back in. I don't know why. All right. Anybody else know anything about this? It's something that I don't know. Decoding just in and of itself may be something of some interest, but the capability of being able to talk on D-Star, which I'm not sure the software does, perhaps is of greater interest or value, but you never know. So. Anybody, did you find anything, anybody, or anybody put this to use? Is it something that is from days gone past, or is it some new project we should keep our eye on? Well, one last time, we'll give a call out. Please key up.
N7TAE.
N7TAE. Go ahead.
Hey, Mike, I know a little bit about this. I think if I'm looking at the right thing, this is a software solution for decoding D-Star. It's been around for a while. The first place I saw it when I was playing around with my GNU radio, GNU radio. There is a module that you can download, and it can by software without any AMBI chip decode D-Star or DMR. There's an RTL-SDR.com web page about it, listening to D-Star using DSD. Like I say, it's a software decoder. It doesn't use an AMBI chip. It's just for experimentation. I don't think you should be fooling around with this for any real work, because it kind of bypasses a patent that the AMBI folks have on D-Star decoding. But anyway, it's been around for a while in various forms that you can download and plug into various software front ends. Backnet Control and N7TAE.
All right, Tom, thanks. It probably, I was Googling and came up with the same response as you did. It looks like to me, just generally, it is an older program made to allow, SDR and other hardware devices that were used primarily for listening, but you can transmit on or through, well, no, I'm sorry, it's the receive-only solution, I believe. But this allowed the capability of decoding D-Star and other digital modes to these devices. But it's not something that you would use to talk on D-Star, communicate on any digital mode. And it seems to be a fairly old and possibly outdated software platform. And I don't see anything really recent about it. But, it's always worth taking a look at. And maybe we can drill down to exactly what it is if anybody has any interest in doing so. But I think the hobby and the capabilities of equipment, devices, firmware, and software in all the digital modes have far passed over what V-Star Decoder as a software platform claimed to do and actually does. So we'll see. If you find out something different, hey, no problem, and let me know that I don't know what I'm talking about, because that does happen from time to time. All right, any other software or firmware or anything else that's new that we should consider? Please keep up.
W6OSO.
W6OS.
Hey, Michael. Thanks for joining us, W6OSO. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm composing a short message to the Roundtable blog at this moment in time, but this is apropos because I have just come across a pre-sale from Gigaparts for $35 to buy the new DV4 Mobile put out by Wireless Holdings. This is the dual CO Ginsu radio that everybody's been looking for. It does DMR, it does P25, it does voice over LTE and FM, D-Star, the whole enchilada. And I'll be sending it over in just a few minutes. But it is available for the pre-orders are available through Gigapart, and there is a slot on Wireless Holdings website, which I will have the link to in just a minute.
Well, in all your superlatives, I missed the name of the product. Mike, give that to me again, and then you can post all you like. W6OSO, go ahead.
Oh, I went through it fast, but it's a very simple name. It's called the DV David Victor 4 Mobile. Very original. That's all they call it. And they say price available in 2017, but they haven't come out with a price yet. I bet they're probably going through certification at this point in time and getting factories geared up. But it looks like it won't be too far off into the future. Back to you, Mike.
Oh, yes. The DV4 Mobile that, boy, they've been talking about that since what, about 2 days ago? And it was the multi-mode mobile that our friends from Wireless Holdings were going to produce, and I guess it's finally ready to roll. There were stations that were interested in it, and we talked about it briefly, but because it was at the time vaporware, essentially, there wasn't much to be said about it. It was demoed at some of the Hamventions. I'm glad that they're finally rolling it out for those that are the DV4 ... aficionados. And we'll see what it looks like, and, well, you know, find out perhaps one of these days, one of these months, when it's going to be released. And we'll look forward to that posting on the Shoutbox, Mike. I appreciate it. Anything else that's new out there that, well, we should be discussing? Stations, please key up. Well, didn't see anybody key up on that, but I had it brought to my attention that our the fine folks at Micronode International, we've talked about some of their products that the conversation started at what seemed to be the fairly high price for a box of, you know, existing equipment that's put in their box. But still, apparently there's a new multi-mode digital voice modem designed for MMDVM open source firmware capability. It's called the Teensy, T-E-N-S-Y, multi-mode digital voice modem. It's $139, but you have to buy a radio interface cable. It looks like it's got a DIN plug or something on top that, although it says it has a USB 2.0 micro B 5-pin conductor, but it's also got a DB9 is what it was. Is actually what it seems to be on the very top of it. And you have to buy a radio interface cable to connect to the radio, and then off you go. I also made note of this Nano Node DV digital radio hotspot called the Nano DV. That is almost $500, but that's a complete plug-and-play device, and that's available. And of course, the Wi-Fi option is extra, as well as a mini wireless keyboard with touchpad. But it includes a built-in 70-centimeter transceiver for communicating with various digital handheld radios. So, these guys have been busy. Stations, have you bought these and put them to use? Are you using one of them now? Tell us about them, please, Kia.
W4WWM.
W4WWM, go ahead.
Okay, Mike. Well, you did ask a question. Did we buy one? So I would say no, we didn't. And the only reason we didn't, we looked at them, we thought it was a pretty good product, but we just think that they're just overpriced. Other than that, that's what I had to say about it. W4WW.
All right. Well, you know, that is the opinion that we had, we received from stations on their earlier, or their first out product with a touch screen and whatnot. I will agree that, it's going to require some convincing to lay out $500 for their Nano Node DV digital radio hotspot, aka Nano DV, but then I don't have one, and I haven't talked to anybody that does, and maybe it works just as slick as could be, but that's a fair investment, and you still need a radio. This Teensy is far less, but you got to connect it to the radio, as opposed to the Nano DV, which you use the radio to transmit to the radio board that's on board. Whereas with the Teensy, you communicate via a cable. So I suspect that there will be stations buying these. Price not relevant to many, and we hope to hear reports on how well, or whether the investment's worthwhile. That's always a consideration. So, anyone else have a Teensy or a Nano DV? And we're not going to make fun of you. We just want to hear about it. Stations, please key up. Well, nothing seen or heard, so we'll wait and see until people get these things and get them working. It looks like this Teensy requires a fair amount of setup. It says it has 20 turn trim pots for TX and RX level adjustment, and LED status indicators for mode of operation, radio status. So you probably have to level out that's what it says, level out the transmit and receive audio from the radio. But, whatever rings your bell. All right, anything else we missed? Some of the stuff from Dayton ought to be hitting the market now, I would think. Anything else out there that is coming out around the corner, be it the radios or hotspots or new ways of getting into the digital modes? I'd like to hear about it. Please key up. All right, no luck there. I would hope that some people would, get this gear and at least give us a lowdown. Of course, I don't know that whether one station thinks it's great or bad will convince others to spend money or not on this new stuff, but it's just fun to talk about it. It's interesting that people are providing equipment to make it easier to operate on digital. And, I don't know that it's a way to replace the hotspots, which seem to work pretty well. And there is a question in my mind about how these devices improve their ability to talk on digital modes, be it D-Star, DMR, or whatever. But I'm sure that, time will help us out in understanding that. So, how did the D-Star QSO Party 2017 go? That was from last Friday, the 22nd, through the 24th. And I'm not sure if I heard anybody, at least on the Constellation, using it to get points, but that doesn't mean anything because sometimes I just walk by and don't pay any attention to the radio, and other times I scratch my head trying to figure out what's going on. So, D-Star QSO Party participants, what did you think? How'd it go? Please key up. Well, maybe the prizes weren't good enough to entice people to participate. Well, I suspect that some people have. We're just not hearing from them. Or maybe they don't want to tell us or reveal what their points were. Look, I don't care, really. I just want to see if it was any fun, if there was anything interesting, if it's nobody cares and there's hardly any participation, or if you found it hard, you had to fight your way into a repeater or reflector to be able to participate in the party because stations were clamoring for contacts. But, oh well, at some point we'll learn of the stations that won and what they did win. Well, I mean, the prizes are listed there. Let's see. Oh yeah, the ID 4100 is one of the prizes. So, and then, well, I don't know about thermal mugs and Icon caps, but free stuff is free stuff. So, any upcoming contests or competitions or parties that involve D-Star and open source digital mode that you'd like to tell us about? Please key up. Well, nothing too exciting. I appreciate W6OSO posting the link to the DV4 mobile, and it does appear to have a photo of a radio. It's available, they say, in 2017, which, well, they've got like 3 months left. I didn't see a price, but I haven't looked at it completely, and I'm not going to waste your time trying to read through what everyone else can read. But, it's something new, and I know that a lot of people wanted a multi-mode, it does everything start type mobile, and this does appear to answer that need, I think. Yeah, supports all digital modes. No need for multiple radios, save space, program from the cloud, which means that they provide the programming for you. Software-defined radio, future modes, So that future modes are just an update away, which means that it may not work on all modes. And I bet, coming out the gate, that it's just DMR? Does anybody know? I mean, it's not out yet, but, oh, well, there's another button that says press for more. And, there is more. Well, anybody have any comments on it now that Mike's posted that? Please key up.
WB5E.
And there's Don, WB5EKU. Go ahead.
And 6HKH in the net, WB5EKU. Well, I don't have a hard price on it, Mike, but I went to Gigaparts, and it'll cost you $35 to reserve your place in line to buy one when they do come out with the radio. So, I imagine if you spend your $35, you get a price on it, and I'd kind of be willing to go along with you and think that the modes will be added as time goes on. It might do D-Star and DMR. Well, if it does DMR, it can do Fusion also. So we'll have to wait and see when they do come out with it. But pay you $35 and get in line.
Yeah, so I stand corrected. It says in the flyer here that all modes are supported, and it says C4FM, which is really a misnomer. It should say Fusion or Yaesu Fusion, because, Yaesu Fusion is not the only, they haven't captured, and they're not the only provider or producer of radios that operate on C4FM, but I understand what they're saying. D-Star, DMR Plus, then D PMR, P25. They say, okay, what's missing is NXDN, which would be later. And it says C4FM, both narrow and wide modes, and D-Star, and then it lists the reflectors as if they're separate modes. So DCS, CCS, REF, we know what they're trying to say. And DMR Plus P25, there's a DB4 LTE, a new voiceover LTE mode that does something interesting that I have yet to figure out. 2 meter 440 and 220. Oh. So, I see. Okay, so DMR and P25 and NXDN is via license and software upgrade later. So, somebody needs to clean this up because it's contradictory. No price. Well, all right. Enough on that. Appreciate hearing that you can pay money to get it, even though you won't know how much it's going to be. I don't understand. Why would you sign up for something not knowing what it's going to cost? And especially given that it's not really clear what it'll do out the gate. All right. I know a lot of people wanted this, and they thought this was, going to be a good thing. And I know that some of the other manufacturers, CSI, were scrambling to try to compete with it. But, all right, very good. Any other new gear? I know there's other stuff announced at Dayton that has yet to make production, has yet to be distributed, but you never know. For those of you that keep a close eye on the, ham radio vendors and other, vendors of ham gear on the web, if there's something out there, speak up. Please keep up. W4WWM, go ahead.
well, just to refer back to that DB4 mobile and Gigaparts. I actually live 3 miles down the road from Gigaparts, and I have to go walk in and take a visit and talk to them about their posts. But as for newer radios, I think just about everything is out. They were talking about two types of DMR radios that came out this year. The TYT, which is a Titera, and also another radio that's pretty good is the Anytone. Those both are DMR radios. And they're probably going to come out in the $200 price range if they haven't already came out. I think one did. The TC 2017 came out. I think it is a dual band. So now we're beginning to get the dual band commercial radios out. Of course, the Chinese built those radios, and they heard us from way over here, and they put the two types of dual band DMRs out, which is the Anytone handheld dual band, and also another handheld called the Titera 2017, and that's out. I haven't heard any reports on the Anytone as of yet, but I have talked to the station, did check in here on the talk group, and talked with me on the TYT 2017, and it sounded pretty good. I was pretty impressed with the rig, so just wanted to put that out. W4WWM back in that.
I appreciate that, Will. Well, is there a need for a dual band DMR radio? Are there DMR repeaters or devices that operate on frequencies other than 70? Well, I mean, I realize there's the 900 DMR radios, but what would be the purpose of a dual band DMR radio? If you don't mind, if you know W4WWM, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, there are DMR 2-meter repeaters. There are a few in between because everything was directed toward UHF. Why? Because in most regions, the 2-meter is maxed out, and all the frequency availability was in the 440 range. That's in most areas. A lot of areas of known. But there are DMR 2 meters. Even with the invention of the MFDVM means that you can build a 2-meter repeater. So it can be had, and there are even 2-meter hotspots. And DV Mega make a dual band hotspot. VHF, as well as, I believe the guy from Canada, Bruce, who built the Zoom spot, will be putting out a VHF model too as well. So there will be use for VHF in the DMR world, W4WW.
Oh, okay. Well, I appreciate it. I realize that, for example, the Motorola, you can order their DMR radios on different bands for different reasons, but that's, again, because of commercial operations and being able to put some of the newer radios to use in older infrastructures. But I just hadn't given much thought to what I would use a dual band DMR radio for, and you just explained it. I wonder if there's a 1.2 gigahertz DMR radio or DMR system. There's a lot of 1.2 gear out there that is basically going unused. I'm sure you're all aware of the problems with D-Star 1.2. Even though the ID1 was probably the best D-Star radio that Icon made, as far as at least the best sounding one, certainly one of the more solid ones. And, Icon produced the 1.2 gig module for its D-Star stack. But, and a lot of people have a lot of gear, and it just seemed that you could put together a 1.2 gig DMR hotspot if there was a DMR HT to put it to use. And I'm just, thinking out loud. Is DMR is there any radios or specifically HTs in the 1.2 gigahertz spectrum band area? Even if it's just slightly outside or above the amateur allocation, does anybody know? Please key up. Well, no response. I did a quick search earlier just because it piqued my attention, and I didn't find anything above 900 for DMR, specifically radios or HTs. That doesn't mean they don't exist. It's just that in the quick search I didn't spot anything, and it just was something that I had thought about. So, all right. Any news that you guys have stumbled upon in the D-Star and other open digital systems that we should be thinking about? Is there something that, we've talked about Fusion 2 a little bit, but haven't seen much more about it, although there have been some postings about, hey, we're not ready for, Fusion 2, so don't, go out and buy those radios. But still, anything new in the D-Star, DMR, and open digital modes that you've been reading about and would like to let us in on the secret? We'd sure like to hear from stations, please. Yep. Yeah, I didn't see anything new either, so I understand that. At this point, we're going to tackle your questions and the open segment early because I got beaten up for holding it off too late the last few roundtables, and there were apparently some stations that just couldn't stay up any later or had, other things they needed to do, and had asked if we would open up earlier than normal. And here, this is probably at least an hour earlier, for questions, generally unrelated to, if you like, topics and things we've talked about thus far, or things that we've not talked about. But anyway, questions generally on D-Star, 4K transcoding, the constellation, or on technical questions that have come up elsewhere and you just didn't get any answers. This would be a great place to ask that question. Or if you have a topic that's, something that you'd like to see discussed. And sometimes questions are topics and topics become questions. Stations, please key up. All right, nothing seen or heard. So, were you guys that had questions about D-Star and digital and radios, equipment, hotspot programming, software that you were beating your brains out elsewhere, or were debating and just didn't get an answer satisfactory to you that you wanted to bring here? And here we are, and don't see any key up. So, nobody has to key up, but doggone it, if people don't key up, it's not much of a roundtable. So, again, this is the open segment. Questions that you'd like to have answered or hope we could answer, or somebody will answer. Stations, please key up.
W4WWM.
Well, you don't have to do a sympathy key up, Will, but I appreciate you participating. W4 WWM. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was thinking about that a little bit, Mike, but I did have a valid question. There's been much talk, maybe last week, a few weeks ago, about the DMR Gateway. And I've seen a couple of posts where Johnson has made some comments, or so I was just wondering, is the new Gateway out yet, or is it still in test mode? If anybody knows right off the bat, anybody downloaded the new up-to-date DMR Gateway, W4WW, or even if it's out, but yet.
All right. Stations who know, please key up. And we say hello to K6KD John. Go ahead.
Well, good evening, Mike and Annette. And I'll turn this other radio down. Jonathan posted that he was committing the experimental branch to the main branch. So I think, going on that, I think it's probably in the main branch. I haven't downloaded it or done anything with it, but that's what I know, or that's what I think I know. Anyway, back to that.
What exactly does that mean? K6KD, go ahead.
Okay, a lot of the software is posted on what's called a GitHub, which is a development and a collaborative environment where there can be a main version, a baseline version, and various branches that can consist of, other versions, including experimental versions. And oftentimes a new feature will be put on a separate branch so that those who want to test it can test it, but it won't interfere with the main use of the regular product. What happens after the test period is completed, the owner of that GitHub can choose to merge that experimental branch into the main branch. So what was previously, testing or experimental becomes the main product. So that's what that means. Back to that.
Okay, I got it now, and that does make sense. So it's possibly available for testing, but it's not yet been combined or included with the primary DMR Gateway software release. So, Will, there you go. It's out there, but it's not really mainstream yet. Anyone else? Well, let me ask, has anybody downloaded the experimental version of the new version of DMR Gateway and given it a try? Have any thoughts? Perhaps you'd like to help us out and looking ahead to it, please key up.
K6KD.
K6KD, go ahead.
No, what I thought I said, Mike, was that Jonathan was combining that into the main branch. It's been available for testing for some time. What I thought I said or was intending to say is that Jonathan has, according to what he wrote in the Yahoo group, has merged that in. So that is the new version, the main version. It has the updates. Back to that. N6HKH, K6KD.
Well, I'm having a tough time that I would double with K6KD, who never doubled. But K6KD, go ahead.
Okay, Mike. Well, no, after you turned it over to me, I said what I was going to say and then passed it back to you, and then I didn't hear anything for about 45 seconds, and then I just keyed up and called you, so I guess that's when you heard doubling, because I hadn't heard anything. What I said was that what the new capabilities that we're testing or experimental have always, at least for several weeks, been available for experimental purposes. But my understanding is Jonathan has already merged that into the main branch. So the capabilities that were formerly experimental are now part of the main branch. At least that's based on what Jonathan wrote in the Yahoo group. So anyway, back to net, K6KD.
WB5.
All right, I think it's clear to everyone except for possibly me. WB5, no, I'm just teasing. Thank you, John. And by the way, I was talking for 45 seconds, didn't get an error, so I don't know, but it doesn't matter. Nobody's going to lose any sleep over what they didn't hear from me. WB5, EKU. Go ahead.
WB5EKU. Yeah, okay. I agree with John. I did see that post that Jonathan did post that he was merging it. But I'm in GitHub right now, and I'm looking at it, and it shows his latest. His latest is 6 days ago, and it is not the newer version of the VMware Gateway. It still only has the two XLX networks in it. So maybe it hasn't made it around yet, but unless he maybe had a little more refinement to do with it before he actually posted it. But I don't see it in the GitHub repository. WB5EKU.
N1D.
Well, hopefully N1DOT can clear this all up for us. Ken, thanks for keying up. Go ahead. N1DOT, got you keying up. Were you just linking, inadvertent, didn't mean to do it, which is no big to do, but otherwise N1DOT, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just linking in, Mike, and I was just checking to make sure I was linked. I was sending a command to IRCDDB Gateway.
Okay, no problem. It's just that you showed up on my screen, and I just thought I'd call on you. All right. So, well, I'm not sure where we're at on DMR Gateway now. In light of WB5EKU's comments, K6KD, anything further?
Yeah, that's what I was linked in on DMR earlier.
No further comments, K6KD.
Likewise, no further comments on it. WB5EKU.
Yeah, comment.
N1DOT.
Alrighty, well, that's that. All right, stations, please key up. Stations, what would you like to talk about? Please key up.
W6K W4
I have W6KD and W4WWM. First, we welcome Bob. W6KD, go ahead.
Hey, good evening, Mike and Annette. Kind of a slow night here. A couple of things. The DMR gateway, for those who are scratching their heads and wondering what that is, we kind of touched on it last week. It is part of the MMDVM suite. It is a rewrite of the DMR piece of the MMDVM package. And so if you go looking for it, well, I suppose if you go looking specifically for it, you might find it, but you don't download that specifically. If you're going to use the KB5RAB image or the Pi-Star image, it's going to either have the current version doesn't have a DMR gateway per se, I don't believe. That functionality is built into the MMDVM program itself. And the upcoming version splits out the DMR functionality into a new module called DMR Gateway, which sits with two peers, one called YSF Gateway for Fusion and one called IRC DDB Gateway, which we're all familiar with, which is the D-Star piece. And then MMDVM Host is the is sort of the master coordinator between those. And depending on how you configure your multi-mode hotspot or repeater, your multi-mode gateway, how about that? MMDVM can talk to one or multiple of those modules to enable your gateway to have one or more modes active. Let's see. Some interesting things to talk about that maybe we haven't talked about before is the hardware required to build a multi-mode hotspot. And we haven't talked, I don't think, here before about DMR entry-level radios either. Not the super expensive stuff, but what do you need to be able to use one of these MMDVM hotspots or gateways? It could be a repeater as well. So either of those could be perhaps a topic of interest to talk about. How do I get into it? How much is it going to cost me? Where do I go to find the stuff? Is there anything laying around my shack right now that's going to be useful in that regard? So if you want to, Mike, we can go along those lines. But let's see what Will has to say first. W6KD.net.
Great suggestions, all, Bob. And W4WWM, you're next. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Thanks much again, Mike. Actually, I think I did read a post about one ham user, asked Jonathan, I believe, or maybe he just addressed it to the group in the MMDVM group, and he said, "Is it possible we can just have MDVM talk to all the three different types of gateways, or four different types of gateways, or however many, instead of patching every time you look around when you're patching the MMDVM with the Yaesu gateway or Fusion gate or Fusion Yaesu, same thing, or a DMR gateway. Why not build a package that the MMDVM just basically talk to all four of the different types of gateways: the P25 gateway, DMR gateway, and D-Star gateway, and Fusion gateway, instead of continually patching the system up. And I think he may have took that to heart. And there were some other issues I think Johnson was looking at before he actually. He may have been working on the last current version of the DMR gateway. But in addition, as Josh stated, apparently he's been working on that reformat of the newer type gateway, DMR gateway. But anyway, my other question to the net is that as we have been testing the transcoder using the open spot, we got about 2 stations that check in on module B, XLX 313V, which is you guys are so gracious enough to let the client use. There still seem to be, for some reason, both of the open spots are not able to program. Well, they're able to program in their radios, the private channels, but they are not getting any response back from things like connect or disconnect or status. So I was wondering if anybody could, or John or Bob, anyone could make a comment on that. Dealing with the open spot, right to net, W4WW.
N1 DOT.
N1DO.
All right, well, so we'll take your question first and then go back and pick up Bob's suggested topics. N1 DOT, welcome, go ahead.
Yeah, the N1, the open spot on D-Star is not designed to be unlinked. Okay, there is no unlink command per se. Okay, well, the way it works is when you link to a reflector, it'll attempt to stay connected to the last reflector that was used. You can through the URCall field put in a URCall command to have it move to another reflector, and it will do that very nicely. But there is no unlink command per se the way it's set up. It's set up for mobile hotspot use, and it's going to attempt to keep relinking to the same reflector that was last used. They did this by design because when people use it in a mobile environment, they're going to lose their cellular connection, their IP address is going to roll, things like this. So they've designed it to, and it doesn't matter what mode you use, Fusion, FCS, DMR, Brandmeister, DMR Plus network using MMDVM protocol. It's designed to always try to reconnect to the master that it last connected to, and if there was a talk group active, it'll try to relink to that reflector all automatically. Well, with D-Star, it always tries to link back to the same reflector that you were currently using. There is no disconnect. There is an info command, there is an echo command, and similar to D-Star, similar to ISCGB Gateway. But you can move it from reflector to reflector, but they designed it not to be disconnected.
W6K.
So I take it you just pull the power. All right, W6KD, go ahead.
Yeah, maybe I heard the question wrong. Let me go back to Will. Will, are your users on DMR on the open spot? Am I correct in that?
Yeah, yes, that's correct. We're talking the users are programming the open spot for DMR use on 313V.
Okay, yeah, what I think is happening, the responses to those commands that you're talking about always comes back from the open spot on talk group 9. Or at least I think that's the default programming. You may be able to change whatever talk group that is. But when they program their radios with the status, the 4,000 is unlink. 5,000 I think is the status command. Don't quote me on that. I'm not sure. But in any event, when you have the radio program, for example, to talk group 5,000, which I believe is the status command, then The OpenSpot sends the answer back, the voice answer, using talk group 9. So unless you have in your, it's called receive groups on most of the DMR programming software, if you do not have that channel programmed to have a receive group active that has talk group 9 as one of the talk groups in that list, then it won't hear the answer because it's technically on talk group 4. It's set for talk group 5000. So that to be able to hear the answer back, you have to have a receive group enabled with talk group 9 with at least talk group 9 in that receive group, and that has to be programmed in the same channel on the radio as the command to, for example, request status or disconnect or whatever. If you don't have that, the OpenSpot will do what you commanded it to do, and it'll send the reply back on talk group 9, but since your radio's in talk group 5000 or 4000 or whatever, it won't hear the answer. So the way to solve that is to have that receive group list specified in that channel's programming. And that's a very common problem, W680.
Yeah, I can clarify also if need be because I got 2 open spots here.
KG.
All right, I've got N1DOT and KG5TNK. First to Ken, N1DOT, go ahead.
Yes, Bob is absolutely correct. When connected to DMR Plus, any reflector status is done by private call. And I repeat, private call. Okay, so you send a private call to whatever you want to link. Okay, and the responses always come back on talk group 9. So that must be programmed in the radio. You gotta have at least a channel with talk group 9 for transmit and an RX group with 9 in it. Or no RX group specified, just receive 9. Okay, the modified firmware on the MD380s helps a lot because you can put it in a promiscuous mode and it'll allow it to come through. Now with Ty Weaver's firmware, KG5 RKI, he actually displays what talk group comes in, even if it's not programmed. It'll display call sign if talker alias is available, and it'll display the talk group with Ty's firmware. But all responses, okay, and it's a 2-step sequence when you connect to an XLX reflector. You select the reflector. Reflector from the list. You got to set up your DMR connector. Then you got to select DBM protocol. Then you select from the XLX reflector from the list, the DMR list, and then you save it, and then you tell it to connect to that with that connector. Then you got to make a second. Then you got to come back in and make a private call for whatever module you got. So if you're going to connect to module A, it's 4001. If you're going to connect to 26, it's 4026. Status is 5000, and disconnected is, and this is all done with private call. No talk groups. Private call only. All responses come back on 9.
Thank you, Ken. Next, KG5TNK. Welcome to the roundtable. Go ahead.
Well, thank you, and thank you for holding it. I guess it's my first time here. I am actually talking to you through the OpenSpot on the TYC MD 2017. I guess they covered it. It's exactly the same problem I had when I first programmed my radio. Their OpenSpot is programmed properly, but then, like you're saying, in that digital compact, some programs call it for your talk groups. Make one for your call ID 9, name it local, OpenSpot, whatever you want, and make sure it's in your receive group. Exact same problem I was having.
Alrighty, yeah, and that seems to be an issue that has popped up during the week on the Constellation as well. So I'm glad that we're able to resolve this now, or at least provide some guidance on it. W4WWM, did your questions get answered? Go ahead.
Yes, they did, but that's exactly what yes, I've had them all to program for the private channels, but now for the status command, the disconnect, and the connect command. They program those as private channels. That's what we advise them to do. And yes, they did have enough contact made for the Talk Group 9. The problem was, and it still is that they don't give any confirmation, saying that it's disconnected or here's the status, you're connected, or so I'm saying everything what everyone said is the bottom line is that they do have all three of those disconnects, status, and connects in the private channel. And Talk Group 9 is made, and they're all in the same receive group. Well, of course, the Talk Group 9 is in this receive group, but they're not getting the return voice indicating such as happening. But I understand the concept because I program my radio and it's working just fine. Of course, I'm on in any tone, handy talkie, and my program works just fine. Of course, it depends on the talk group set. Talk group set for this, of course, go through a Pi-Star, which is talk group 6, is a talk set, and the talk set their response to 9. So we were trying to make sure we had all of it covered, and we thought we did, and we think we do, but we're just not getting the return voice. So we'll go back over the radio Pro Club with them and see exactly what they got in W4WW.
Can I comment to Will, Mike?
No, but of course, in one DOT, go ahead.
The recommended way to set up your code plug is to be listening on 9 all the time. Set up a channel for Talk Group 9. Okay. Then what you do is you go into your contacts and you initiate your private call from there. Okay, because it's almost useless to program up a separate channel for private call because you're defeating the purpose. Because the minute you make the private call, that open spot's going to try to respond almost immediately before you get a chance to switch back to Talk Group 9. Okay, so the best way to do it is to program your radio to transmit and receive on Talk Group 9 with the proper hotspot frequency. Go into your contacts. Some firmware on some radios allow you to actually go and, like on my MD380, I can go into utilities and I can actually go in and initiate a private call directly. Because Ty's firmware does this. But the way to do it is there's a contact manager. You got to go in and do a manual dial, and then go into your contacts, do a manual dial, and enter the private call you want. Because you only need to transmit it once. Okay, but you have to have your receive set for receive of Talk Group 9. Otherwise, you will not get any response back. Because the open spot will be trying to respond back on Talk Group 9. And if your channel is set for private call, you're not going to hear it. N1DOT.
W6.
W6KD, go ahead.
Yeah, I've got my radios programmed somewhat differently. I actually have a channel programmed with the primary talk group is the talk group out of the contacts list is the command itself. For example, if I want to connect to the talk group 4001 or the A module, same difference on XLX313. I rotate the knob to the appropriate memory channel. And what the receive groups do, and what I was gonna mention, Will, is that I've seen this several times now. People believe that when they program the receive group, they're done, and that's not the case. The receive group has to actually be specified in each of the channels that are going to use it. So in my case, I have a channel that's set up as Talk Group 4001, but elsewhere in the all of the other characteristics of that particular channel, there's a spot there for receive group, and I have to list my receive group that has that Talk Group 9 in it there. The fact that I created the receive group isn't enough. The receive group has to be specified as part of each and every channel that needs to use it. So I key up with that channel set in the radio, and it transmits with Talk Group 4001 set, and that's what goes out on the stream. And as Ken said, it immediately answers back on Talk Group 9, but that's not a problem because Talk Group 9 is in that receive list. That receive list means I will receive whatever talk groups are listed there, regardless of how the radio is programmed. Regardless of what channel the radio is programmed on at the time. So my receive group, which is called RX09, because Talk Group 9 is the only thing that's in it. So in the programming for that channel, it's on Talk Group 4001, but it's also got receive group 09 specified in the programming for that channel. And if I have any other channels that talk to an open spot, they also have to have that receive group specified in the channel programming. And what I've seen people doing is they program the receive group and figure they're done. They don't realize that just because it's there doesn't mean that each channel uses it. Each channel has to be programmed to use it. So anyway, but that's how I do it. I don't. Not all radios have the ability to ad hoc send a reset.
Yeah, one small point, guys.
N.
Yeah, when I'm done, Ken. Anyway, not all radios have the ability to ad hoc send a private call in order to affect the linking command or whatever, like what Ken's talking about. The 380 will do it. Some of the others will. Some of the others don't, though. So that's anyway. So that's an alternative way of doing it. But that's how the receive group works by giving you the ability to hear other talk groups besides the one that's programmed in the current channel. So back to that W6KD.
And of course, W6KD is talking about the CPS programming that's required, and just beware, not all radios provide receive group programming in the manner that the W6KD describes, although the major manufacturers do. So you have to know the CPS, and that's the consumer programming. So for each of the radios. Thank you, Bob. N1DOT. Go ahead.
Okay, two small points. Do not get confused talk groups with private calls. Status, link, and unlink are all done by private call. Now, you can program in your contacts in the radio, and this is where it pulls the information. You can program in both talk group, which is considered group call, private call, and all call. All call is very rarely used. Okay, so don't get confused with private call. Private call is a call from one station to another. Okay, a group call is a station where you're trying to transmit to a group or one to many. Now, the way the open spot works and the way it works on GMR Gateway, it's routed through Talk Group 6. Okay, the open spot is routed through Talk Group 9. Okay, but you have to set up a receive group that has Talk Group 9 in it and whatever your private call is. Okay, so you got to transmit your private call via the private call channel the way it's programmed. But you must have your RX group set to receive 9 for it to work. Then you switch back to Talk Group 9 to transmit through. That was the small point I was trying to make. N1DOT.
KE2F.
All right, Ken, I'm not quite sure that I agree with private call use, but perhaps it's unique to your radio. KV2FJD. Thanks for keying up. Go ahead.
I'm a little confused. I have that configured in my my radio. I have the open spot configured per the configuration on the website. I'm not getting any response. I have Talk Group 9 in my receive group, and when I key up on private call for 5,000, I'm not getting any response on Talk Group 9. So just not following you how this should be configured for the open spot, or maybe for my radio, because I have a PD782G.
Okay, Rod. Who makes PD 278? I'm sorry. Who makes the PD 782G? What make is that?
Hytera, Mike.
N1BO.
Yeah, that's a Hytera radio. So, but when I configure the private call in the PD782, it doesn't show up in the RX receive group. The only thing I have in my RX receive group is my Talk Group 9. So, I have it configured. I think I have it configured correctly, but I'm not hearing any responses back from the XLX 313.
Yeah. Can I get back to him, Mike?
N1B.
Ken, yeah, but I would really appreciate it if you wouldn't talk to your key up. If you would quick key, I'd greatly appreciate it, because what's happening is you're doubling with other stations that are just quick keying. Of course you can, Ken. N1DOT, go ahead.
On the Hytera, program your channel to Talk Group 9 for transmit receive. Okay? On the Hytera, use your manual dial. Go into your contact list, use your manual dial. That allows you to do a direct entry and make a private, and I repeat, private call. XLX will not respond, and neither will DMR Plus unless you do a private call from the manual dial on the Hytera. You can go in and do a direct entry into the manual dial, okay, and then send a private call to 5,000. You will then get a response back from the XLX on Talk Group number 9 with your ID. It'll actually send back the response via your private call ID, and then that's the way it'll show up on your screen. Okay, but the response will come back via Talk Group number 9.
Configuring the for my Talk Group, I'm not changing, say, 5,000. I'm not configuring 5,000 for a private call in my contact list.
No, you don't have to. Because see, what happens is on the Hyteras, they allow you to do a direct manual entry. This is a thing that was found out about when people were using Hyteras for DMR Plus. Okay, you talk on Talk Group 9, you receive on Talk Group 9, all responses come through from Talk Group 9. Okay, to link, unlink, and get a response back, it must be done via private call. Well, on the Hytera radios, just like on the TYTs with the modified firmware, you initiate that down through your contacts menu, from the direct contacts menu. You don't have to have it stored on a channel for it to work. You can just simply do a manual dial and direct enter it, because you're only going to transmit it one time.
All right. N1DOT standby. KB2FJD. Are you up to speed now? Go ahead.
Okay, so I did configure the contact list, and so I don't select private call in my contact list for Talk Group 5,000, say. I don't select it under the contact list?
Yes, you would.
N1BOT.
Well, yeah, that's what I thought. That's what I did, because under the contact list, you can either select group call or private call. So I have private call selected for 5,000, 4,002, 4,001, and that's it, and 4,000. But when I try to connect, I'll get a connect for 5,000, but I don't hear any response back, even though I have my talk group set to talk group 9. And, you know, my receive group is set to talk group 9.
Okay. W6KD. Any suggestion? Does anyone know if his programming is correct as he described? Please key up.
VK W6KB.
I have VK4TUX and W6KD. VK4TUX, go ahead.
Yeah, Mike, and thanks for the net. There's two methods of doing it, as was explained before. But for the channel select method, using a private call of 5,000 with a receive group called talk group 9, if that's the call group you're using to connect, normally on XLX, depending on what program you're using, you may use talk group 6 or 8, depending on the system you're using. But whatever talk group that you actually go back to talk on is the one you should have in the receive group there, and a private call of between 4,000 to 4,026, 4,000 being disconnect, 4,001 being Alpha to Zulu at 4,026, and 5,000 for status. So it's a private call contact. There's normally a one head icon on the contact type. Now, as Ken was saying, with manual dial, you don't need to use the contact list at all. A manual dial is automatically a private call connection, a private call up. Any DMR radio with a keypad, normally you can use manual dial. So normally you would program a button on your keypad in the program button, P1 or P2, whatever, to go into a manual dial within the contacts. Just see if I got it. You can hold that button in to go into a manual dial position, and then key up the keypad with the 4-digit number to then connect to the module. I don't call them reflectors because they're really modules. And then you do that from the talk group that you're talking on, whether it be 9, 8, or 6, and you just continue on with the QSO once you've linked up. So there's two different methods, but if you use the manual dial, then there's no need for the contact to be entered as a private call. Back to net control, VK4TUX.
All right, Adrian, thank you. W6KD, go ahead.
Yeah, a couple things to sort of re-emphasize something Adrian just said. If you have a keypad on your radio, then you can use that. But for example, my Hytera MD782G, the mobile radio, does not have a keypad on it, so that's not a possibility. So it has to be programmed into the radio to be able to send to be able to key up with the appropriate talk group set in the channel in order to affect the command. By the way, none of mine use private call. I know Ken has emphasized that a number of times here, but mine works perfectly fine with all those commands set in group call mode, and I use it all the time that way. I just tested it a second ago, and it's working just fine. I keyed up on I did a status query on one of my open spots, and it came right back. So I'm not sure that in fact, I am sure that the private call is not that important because it works as a group call as well. The thing I was going to mention to the other station whose call I'll have to look at on screen here, KB2FJD, yeah. You said you had the receive group programmed, and I'm going to reiterate what I said earlier. You can have a receive group set up, but unless the channel that you're using specifies to use that receive group, it won't have any effect. And that's the error that I've seen most commonly when helping folks try to get that voice feedback working. Is that if they have the receive group set, elsewhere in the programming, they don't have the receive group specified as part of that particular channel's programming, and then it won't work. So double check that just to be sure, because you might well have a receive group set up properly, but you don't have it. You don't have the channel program to use it, is what I'm saying anyway. If that's not the case, then yeah, I'm not sure where to look next. But yeah, and also yeah, there's a bunch of radios that don't have keypads on them. A bunch of DMR radios, a bunch of very expensive Motorola radios that don't have keypads on the front of them. So if you've got one of those radios, you got to be able to do it in the channel programming without being able to fast finger in a private call via the keypad on the front. That's a good reason for buying a radio with a keypad, by the way, but a lot of the radios don't have it. My Hytera has an optional microphone that'll do that, but I don't have it yet. 26 Kitty.
All right, Bob, appreciate it. Yeah, the private call thing, it bugged me. I mean, in the CPS, in the programming, I don't think there's ever a case where you'd want to use a private call in what we're talking about doing here. Group call works everywhere, and I haven't heard anything to the contrary. Now, the manual dial through the radio, if you have that capability, issuing a private call is appropriate depending upon the radio's manufacturer and other things, but it is one way to get the open spot to respond with the Talkroom 9 ID, but it's far better to program it, and as Bob has said twice now, you got to enable that receive group in all of your talk groups that are going to be used with the open spot and connecting to reflectors, especially the 4K transcoding reflector. Any final comments on open spot before we actually step back to the topics that Bob suggested, which are topics that are just as relevant and we haven't talked about in quite a bit of time. But I wanted to make sure we didn't leave anybody in the lurch over the open spot programming, properly putting the talk group and enabling receive in your CPS. Anything further on that? I don't want to leave anybody, doing donuts in the dirt trying to understand what we're talking about here. And I don't really ever want to get down into what button do you push under what circumstance. Nevertheless, there may be some cleanup questions we need to address. Stations, please key up.
VK4.
VK4, TUX. Go ahead.
Okay, Mike, regarding the group call of the open spot, that's fine if it works, but you have to remember that the open spot was actually fitting for the XLX was actually a hack on the DMR Plus connector to enable that to work. So it's the true protocol for it is private call, especially when using DMR gateway. I've tested it, and if you in some situations where you use a group call instead of a private call, actually the call will go through the brandmeister instead of XLX, etc. So I guess, if you want to make it relevant to DMR Gateway, the true technical format should be private call. But, if people can get away with using group call, that's fine. But a manual dial is normally always a private call. That illustrates that. And normally you would program it in a channel as a private call to be technically correct. But I'm not saying that people won't. But I think if you're using DMR Gateway, you need to do that. And I've been using the S branch of DMR Gateway for the last 2 months. I found a lot of the problems in there, which I told Jonathan about directly, and he's fixed it up now. That's the reason it's ready for merging now, because of the work I've done to find the issues with it, which I've mentioned here before. The 8 prefix for the reflector linking wasn't working properly, and a few of the other things. But so the branch is there. It's available for anyone to download and install. They just need to go to the GitHub page and use the drop down under the master and look for XLX Sierra, and that's it. So, and DMR Gateway's always been needed to select the 3 various masters: Brandmeister, DMR Plus, and XLX. It's never been done directly from MMDVM host. Technique control VK42X.
N.
Appreciate it, Adrian. And also, in the shout box, I also want to thank U7TAE for also remarking about the DMR Gateway and Jonathan's comments concerning the fixes made to both branches. We appreciate you looking into that and clearing that up for all of us, as I apparently muddied it up unnecessarily. N1DOT, go ahead.
Yeah, on the open spot, you could get away with using a talk group call. But with DMR Gateway, you're not going to get away with it because of the way they do the private call and talk group remapping in order to give you access to the 3 networks and route them through 6, 8, and 9. On XLX on 6, DMR Plus on 8, and Brandmeister on 9. They do some serious remapping in there. So in order to get a status disconnect or link with DMR Gateway, you must use a private call, because that's the way it's designed to work, because it remaps everything appropriately to force those rules. Okay, if you try to send and you have to do it, instead of doing it with 4000, you got to start it with a network prefix. Like with XLX, it would be a network prefix of 4, so it would be 64XXX. DMR Plus would be 84XXX, and Brandmeister to link and unlink reflectors would be 94XXX.
K6Katie recognizes. Okay, Ken, are you talking about the programming via the radio and its controls? Or are you talking about the CPS? Are you suggesting that private call is appropriate in your CPS programming software that you ultimately download to your radio? N1DOT. K6KD is recognized. N1DOT, go ahead.
If your radio has a full keypad, then you can do a manual dial. If your radio does not have a full keypad, then you got to do it through your channel programming within your CPS.
No, I understand. Okay. No, I got it. Okay, Ken, I appreciate that. K6KD, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to make the observation, like I think it's probably been pointed out. Some of the stations are just talking about OpenSpot. Some are just talking about DMR Gateway, and some are talking about both. And I think that's the source of a lot of confusion. One in particular, the DMR Gateway typically, if it's set up, the way most people use it, we'll use a 6 prior to the 4000 or 5000, and use talk group 6. The OpenSpot doesn't do mapping, and so the programming is different. So anyway, I think that's just part of the confusion. I don't know that there's any major disagreements. I think they're just talking about two separate things. Back to that.
VK4PUX.
All right. VK4TUX, go ahead.
Okay, Mike and Annette. My point on that is, obviously everyone acknowledges that maybe on the open spot the private call works and the group call works. Okay, so that's fine. But you may be using the same frequency for your open spot as you use, say, for a DMR gateway hotspot system with one radio. You may have just one zone that covers all that radio, and if you program your contact as private call contacts for channel selection, with the receive group being the talk group that you're going to talk on, you've got to remember that when you key it up on that channel, you still got to go back to the talk group to talk. You can't stay there to talk on the queue, so you can hear the link, and then you've got to return back to the correct talk group. It's a little bit like linking on the D-Star and going back to CQ to talk. It's the same concept. But if one's technically correct and the other one's not, even though they both work, I think the safe bet would be to use the technically correct one, which is private call. That's my point there, and that'll also cover you for DMR gateway. That's what I'm getting at. Back to net control, VK4TUX.
WA6PX.
All right, Adrian, I appreciate the clarification. In fact, I appreciate all the stations helping to clear this up. It does get murky at times, and at times I'm murky, and it doesn't matter how clear you guys are. So I appreciate the clarifications. WA6PX, go ahead.
Yeah, this is WA6PX.
WA6PX, I didn't get any of that. It was all R2D2. Please try again.
Unlink.
WA6PX.
Hey, Jim, all I got was, hey, Mike. You're having some difficulty, and I don't think it's me, but you never know. But for some reason, it's just a huge amount of packet loss. I'll give you another shot at it, and then we'll have to move on to the WA6PX. Try again. All right, I didn't see anything there on any of the reflectors, so hopefully you'll be able to clear that up and join us again. All right. W6KD, let's say you take us back to how do I get into it? W6KD, go ahead.
Okay, well, yes, I'm trying to figure out where the best place to start is. In fact, all of my experience with it so far has been via gateways, my preferred mode for D-Star as well. A lot of folks that are D-Star only guys that have been with us for a long time, have been using DVAPs or DV Megas, and I still think that's the best way to get in on the DMR side as well. And you have your own essentially private simplex repeater that you can link anywhere you want, leave it linked anywhere you want, turn it off, do whatever you want with it. A much better way to operate than being constrained to the rules that may be established by somebody that runs the repeater or whatever. So my my druthers are on the hotspot side of things. The multi-mode hotspots that are available right now for working both D-Star and the other digital modes include the OpenSpot, which we've talked about a number of times here. You may or may not have one of those, but it's a multi-mode device that's configured basically with a web interface, and we've talked a bit about it before. I won't get into great detail with it. If you are a D-Star user and you've been using a IRC DDV based image for a hotspot with a DV Mega, that could be D-Star Commander, it could be Western Digital, and so forth. You already have the hardware you need to set up a multi-mode hotspot. It's just a matter of changing the software, and there are a couple of popular images that will work with the DV Mega. Instead of running the software that you're running for D-Star only now, you go out and get yourself a image that's based off of MMDVM, Multimode Digital Voice Modem host software, written by the same guy that wrote the underlying software for most of the most common hotspots, G4KLX. Let me change hands. And so if you've already got a DV Mega sitting around the house, or you're using it as a unique
W6K.
Looks like I dropped off there. Anyway, you've already got everything you need to set yourself up a multi-mode hotspot just by changing the software. In fact, you can pop out the SD card for D-Star Commander or whatever you're using, and put one of the popular images. The two most popular multi-mode images that I'm aware of. One is made by Russ Biggs, KB5RAB, and he has an image that's based off of the MMDVM. It's you download it just like you did for any of the D-Star based images, and you put it on an SD card, and there's some configuration. There's a learning curve there, but it's not a tremendous learning curve if you've already been using a hotspot. And then the other one is Pi-Star, which is driven. It's configured with a web interface. And again, it's based on Jonathan Naylor G4KLX's MMDVM host, and the difference is really just the interface and how it's configured and the likes. But they run essentially the same software. They're just just as D-Star Commander is for D-Star, it's a front end for configuring Jonathan's most awesome, excellent freeware gateway software. Except in the case of MMDVM, it's configurable to do D-Star, PMR, Fusion, or P25, or any combination of the above. The combinations start getting a little bit more tricky, but anyway, the short version of that is that you already have everything you need to set up a gateway. And then, of course, there are the dedicated MMDVM boards, like the ZoomSpot board that we've heard about a little bit here and there. This Teensy board is a piece of MMDVM hardware. It connects to a data-capable radio to make a hotspot. So there are other options out there as well. But the most popular, I think, are the OpenSpot, which is sort of a ready in the box turnkey version, and the DV Mega that we're all familiar with already. If you have a DV Mega and you've had one for a long time, you might need to update the firmware to make it work. But other than that, it's the same gadget sitting on the same Raspberry Pi, just with a different image on the SD card. So let me break there before we go into I think radios next.
Alrighty, so stations with questions about what you've heard thus far, please key up. W4WWM, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I guess I have a comment, not a question, but well, I do have a question. Well, I know that all the image makers really focus on Raspberry Pi, but there are other SBCs out there that work real fine too. So my question is there anybody else besides the two popular making? Well, I already know Adrian is making his own probably, but for the Odroid, that's another fine little SBC. You know, not. I know most of the majority are in Raspberry Pis, but it really would be nice if someone else could make image for running on other SBCs. Example as of the Odroid C1s and C2s and XU4s. But I know Pi-Star do make one for the XU4, but not for the C1s and C2s, Odroids. They're nice little units, but there are many. I know we can't make images for all, but I would say, I guess try. I'm hoping to see other persons come out with images for other SBCs, or better yet, the top 3 that most of the ham radio operator uses. And I guess that's really not known, but the most I know is everybody loves the Raspberry Pis, and of course the Odroid is probably somewhere behind Raspberry Pi with use. Other than that, the Odroid is much more powerful. W4WW, I'm back to you.
VK.
Well, the question would be, is there a multi-mode image for the Odroids? VK4TUX, go ahead.
Okay, Mike, I was just going to say, if I know Andy that runs Pi-Star, that's the Pi-Star images. If someone sends you a bit of hardware, he'll make what's needed. I think W1MSG sent him an XU4, and he made an image up for that. So any hardware that's sent to him, if someone wants to send him a C1 or a C2 or anything else that they feel they want an image for Pi-Star, I think the guy will get onto it. But that's probably the best way to get what you want. Just maybe if a club or something, we just throw a few bucks in each to get one of those devices and just post it over to him in England, and I think he'll take it from there. Over.
K6J.
All right, fair enough. K6JM, welcome. And go ahead.
Oh, hi, Mike. Interesting topic. I'm kind of a curmudgeon in this regard. When we were doing basic D-Star Commander stuff on a Pi 3 before multi-mode became an issue, I'd run the top commands from time to time, and we were not using very much of the CPU, I think a few percent, in the 5% range. So trying to get it more powerful than a Pi 3 is interesting if you want to use it for your regular computer. You do compiles while you're talking and stuff. But they're so cheap that, if you just allocate a Pi 3 to what you're doing, I don't need it now, but everybody's different and everybody has other objectives, so I can't say what other people should do. Now with multi-mode, it's going to take a little bit more of the CPU, but I still don't think we're stressing the Pi 3 much. I have nothing for or against the Pi 3, it's just that it's so ubiquitous and there's so much software available that it's just kind of a practical thing to do is go with it. But I absolutely agree with the first op that said, there's a lot of other places where there's a lot of other hardware out there that you can do this stuff on. The one thing, I think some of us have done this. I'm not real expert in Linux, but it is fun to build one up from scratch and then load the various programs from scratch. You learn more than if you get an image. So that's probably a kind of a good thing to do if get a fast other machine and then build it yourself. But for lazy people like me, Pi 3 does pretty well and has plenty of CPU left over. Back to you. This is K6JM.
Alrighty, appreciate it. Alright, so W6KD, I think we're ready to move on to the radios. Unless there's somebody else has a question, but I'm not calling for any more at this point. Instead, I want to let Bob continue and finish up, and then we'll carry on with more discussion. W6KD, go ahead.
Okay, I wanted to address what just came up there. The other SBCs, which for those of you who don't recognize the acronym, is a single board computer. Yeah, there's lots of them. There's the Banana Pi. There's the 3 or 4 different variations of the Odroids. And I can't even think of the one I'm trying to think of now. But anyway, yeah, and pretty much all of them are capable of doing it. I focus on the Pi for a couple of reasons. Well, first of all, is that this, what I'm talking about right now is focused more on D-Star guys that are thinking about maybe branching out. And the Raspberry Pi is by far the most known and popular solution for hotspots, and particularly if you've already got one and a DV Mega, you've already got everything you need to set up a multi-mode one anyway. The other thing about the Pi versus the others is that the Pi isn't necessarily better, but the Pi is it's sort of like with gaming machines, the PlayStations and the Xboxes and the likes. What makes them able to do what they do so well, because if you look at the actual hardware that underlies some of that gaming stuff, it isn't all that impressive when compared to what you can put on a desktop, like the stuff I use for my flight simulator. But what it is it's standardized. Is that every one of those Raspberry Pis has the same processor, has the same bus, has the same peripherals, uses the same drivers, and therefore one image will work on all of them with very, very little reason to have to mess with it at all, other than configuring it with your call sign and the other particulars, for operating it. So that's the beauty of the Raspberry Pi, is that it's everywhere, that it's a standardized configuration that you can build an image for, and not have to worry about all the other different variations that there might be, to other computer options. So I think that's why the Pi is as popular as it is, not just in the radio world, but also elsewhere. It's from a software developer's perspective, being able to develop for something that where every board that's every computer that's going to run it looks the same that's very appealing, because it takes a lot of the variation and the potential conflicts between drivers and devices and that kind of stuff, and dispenses with all that. Let me change hands. And Jim, K6JM is correct. You don't use much of the capacity of any of these computers. In fact, you can run MMDVM on a Raspberry Pi Model B, not the B+, not the B+2, not the 3. The original Model B is sufficiently powerful to do the job. All the MMDVM or the D-Star software that came before it really is a specialized router. All it's doing is taking a very low-speed stream of data and sending it where it needs to go. That's the bulk of what it's doing. It's not doing any audio processing. All of that's done in the radio. It gets a GMSK signal, converts it into a digital stream, and sends it out over the internet. And that is really, really not much work, even for a tiny 1 gigahertz or 900 megahertz single board computer. It's not breaking a sweat at all. In fact, usually, if you look at the modern images, the stuff that's making the processor spike up is all the gee whiz stuff. The desktop software, the graphical user interface that's running on the desktop. If you've got a web server running on there to, like the PyStar does, that's what's hitting the processor far more than the actual MMDVM software. So any of these computers is really enough to do the job as far as handling the MMDVM workload. It's really nothing. You wouldn't even hit 10% on a Model B, which is I think those things were 700 megahertz, and they're single core versus quad core on the Pi 3, etc. They're considerably slower, and they're still way overkill for what we're doing with MMDVM. So with that, I'm gonna break for a second, and let's, if there's any more questions or comments, we can wrap that up, and then we can talk about radio.
Alrighty, well, that makes sense. So, any further questions or comments before we move on to radios? And it's okay to quarrel with Bob if you like, just do it politely. Stations, please key up. Well, it appears that nobody disagrees, so I don't think we have, and I'm just checking the boards and looking at my inbox, and nobody's listening offline. Well, they would have to be listening online, but perhaps in another mode is not challenging anything thus far, so good job, Bob. The W6KD, carry on.
Okay, so we've just talked about the hotspot piece of the solution. What your radio is going to talk to get to either, and it could go to the Brandmeister master servers. It could go to an XLX reflector, one of the new generation ones that can handle DMR as well as D-Star. And in fact, as we've been advertising here the last few weeks. Some of them, like XLX 313 that's connected to Constellation, you can connect on DMR and then go through the transcoder out to D-Star. So that's what you do with the gateway piece. Now the radios, most of us are used to buying our radios, from HRO, or before that AES was around, and DX Engineering and Gigaparts, and the radio, the ham radio specific retailers are typically where we're used to going to shop for stuff. Interestingly, the DMR radios they're not made for us. They're made for the commercial. They're made for commercial use, for commercial users, and they are sold in a lot more places. And in fact, it's pretty amazing if you've never seen it. You can go on Amazon and find these things for sale. And the price tags will, if you've not looked at it, they're pretty shockingly low. Probably the most popular entry-level DMR radio is the Tytera. That's with the Tytera, Tytera MD380, and it's not uncommon to find the radio with a drop-in charger and a battery and a programming cable and the software. Pretty much all the things you need, the basics you need for the radio, to be sub $90, below $90 for a digital radio that will work here. And then there's a full range of other options. Tytera makes a few more. They make an MD390. They make an MD390 that's got a GPS on it, which isn't really being used very much on the DMR side of things yet. And HRO sells a line that's marketed by I think it's DX Engineering, but I'm not sure. The Terra is Tera, like Tytera without the TYT on the front. And I have a couple of those. They're $250 range radios that are very nice, very sturdy. Let me change hands and reset. And then you got, you can continue to move up in price and features. You got Hytera with an H, Hytera. I don't know what the fascination with brand names ending in Terra is, but the Hyteras are, that's where you start entering into the commercial grade of radios. They tend to be very sturdy, higher power, heavier duty. And then, of course, the king of the hill is Motorola. You can drop $1,000 on one of those HTs if you want. Plus, there's issues with you get the radio, and then you got to buy the programming software, or I should say, you buy a 2-year license for the programming software. The drop-in charger is going to cost you even more, etc. So, with Motorola, you get a bulletproof radio at a premium price. It's a great radio, but it's also very, very expensive. And you've got that full range. You've got everything from a radio that really costs less than a lot of MP3 players, sub $100, and that radio comes with everything you need: a drop-in charger, a battery, an antenna, programming software, and cable. And then you've got a whole range of more expensive, more feature-packed, better displays, heavier duty, but the interesting thing is that most of those radios are not available from your local ham store. Gigaparts is probably the best place that I've seen so far with regards to selling, some various options in the DMR world. HRO is way behind the power curve. The Terra is the only radio I've seen there so far. But the best deals are on Amazon, and so that's kind of the lowdown on the radios. Probably the biggest downside for DMR radio for us D-Star guys is that the programming of the radios is not trivially easy. It's not rocket science either. It doesn't require a brain surgeon to do the work. You do have to sit down and get through a little bit of a learning curve, because it is a different animal from how you're probably used to programming any radio you've ever had before. But once you figure out the sort of hierarchical organization of a CPS, or customer programming software program, for one of these radios, it kind of translates to all the others. The terminology is not exactly the same, but it's pretty close. Reset. So anyway, and then the last thing I'll mention, the basics that you need are, obviously the radio. They pretty much all come with a battery. But what kind of battery you get is a question worth asking. You don't want a low capacity El Cheapo on it that's going to go dead really quickly. The other thing you have to be careful about when you're looking at these radios in the commercial world is that there are some that are VHF, there are some that are UHF, and the model numbers have maybe just one character difference between them. And you might think you're getting a UHF radio, when in reality you're buying a VHF radio that's not even for a band that covers the ham bands. It could be 150 to 170 megahertz or something, and won't even work on the ham band. So you have to be a little careful to make sure that you're buying a radio that is in the band that you're interested in, and that will cover the ham radio frequencies, as many of them do, but there are some that don't as well. So you have to be careful about that. And of course you need a charger for it. Some of them, even the lowest end ones, come with a reasonably functional drop-in charger. And then you need the software and the cable to be able to program it, or you need to have somebody else that's got that can do it for you. And the Terras that I was talking about, the ones I bought at HRO, the cable didn't come with it, but it was like $15. The Hyteras, which are higher-end radio, you're going to pay $40 or $50 for that programming cable. And the Motorola's, I have no idea, but I can only imagine. So that's sort of the layout, quick and dirty, on what's out there in radios, where to go look for it, and if you're not familiar with it, it's definitely not a bad idea to find somebody that's been doing this for a little while and pick their brain and find out, what they like or don't like about the radio they have, what to look for, what's bad, what's good, etc. Because like I said, it's a little bit different animal. A lot of the features that are built into some of the higher end are stuff we can't even use anyway. You know, some of the Motorola's higher end features are made for systems and it's made for using advanced repeater features. You know, for a $10,000 Motorola repeater up on a mountain. You know, running the dispatch operation for Joe's Plumbing Service or whatever. So some of you got to know what you're paying for, and like I said, you definitely want to make sure that you're getting a radio that's covering the right frequencies. Gigaparts, for example, will they'll keep you kind of going in the right direction. If you tell them you're a ham and what you're trying to do, I think you'll probably end up okay. So back to the net, W6KD.
All right, Bob, thank you. Questions regarding selection of DMR radios from the D-Star user's perspective. Stations, please, Kia. All right, nothing heard, but in listening on DMR, just generally, one of the common complaints is that I wish I had gotten a radio with a full keypad, or I wish I got a radio that has more than one line of dot matrix, seemingly text scrolling across. It doesn't have to be color, but why not? And I wish I had more information on that screen. And even perhaps more so is the CPS, that is the programming software, the consumer programming software as it's often called, but everybody understands it as CPS. In some radios, it's woefully lacking and not even complete. Now, going back to when DMR got a big jump start in amateur radio, many of the radios that Bob talked about weren't around, and some of them had really hokey CPSs, and they were just nightmares. But it seems that it's becoming, as far as most programming software, more stable in the sense that you can now compare features within the CPS from one to another, and the language seems to be getting coordinated in some. That's a bad term, but it seems to be more consistent. But nevertheless, Bob makes a great point. If you can, talk to somebody who owns the radio, the DMR radio that you are interested in, and ask them, what do they think? Especially for a D-Star guy who might be buying his first DMR radio and did he like it? Was the CPS a nightmare? It doesn't have to, it doesn't have to be as comprehensive as perhaps what Motorola provides through a subscription service for its Moto Turbo line, which is very, very complex, but at the same time, very intuitive. So you don't want to cut yourself short, but then again, are you going to use the DMR radio for all potential purposes, or just to talk to a hotspot, or the repeaters you'd like to get involved with? And each of these activities require different programming. So, a great idea. Anybody run into a DMR radio that was just a great price and worked just as they suspected out of the box, and they've had a lot of fun with? Maybe a few model numbers might be worthy of being tossed out now. We'll take you. Please, Kia.
W6K.
W6KD, go ahead.
Yeah, well, a couple of, related, not horror stories, but, examples of things that can bite you, like if, let's suppose you're planning on using your new DMR radio in a portable, in a mobile setup, and you want to be able to connect an antenna cable to it, either run an antenna external in the vehicle or run it back somewhere. those very high-priced, very nice Motorola radios don't use standard BNA or they don't use the standard antenna connectors that we're all used to. It uses a threaded stud, I think some kind of a metric threaded stud that it doesn't fit anything that you're going to have. You can't just plug in you can't just buy a regular old dual band radio and plug it into it and run the coax out. I suspect that somewhere you can find an adapter for that, but it's a non-standard connector. The antennas are pretty sturdy. The radios are really sturdy. You could beat somebody to death with one. Non-standard antenna connector, and that's on a $1,000 radio that you would think would do everything and do it well. It might present a problem there. And the programming software. I don't know if the situation has changed with Motorola, but at one point, a year or so ago, you had to sign a non-disclosure agreement. You had to be vetted by the company before they would let you buy the 2-year lease on the software. So, if that kind of intrigue is not something you're into, might not be something that might not be a direction you'd want to go. The high Terras, if you buy one from a amateur radio focused dealer like Gigaparts, they'll get you the programming software because the programming software is keyed to the radio. And if you buy one from Joe's Bargain Basement Radio or whatever, it may not come with the programming software. And then there's the $90 MD380 that it's very popular for a reason, cost being probably the primary one. And Ken, NDOT mentioned earlier, it's one of the few radios, if not the only one, that has what they call a promiscuous mode, which means you can make it so that it receives every talk group. So you don't have to worry about the receive group programming stuff we were all hashing about earlier. You can just set the radio so that, no matter what talk group is coming across, as long as it's on your frequency, you're going to hear it. So, there are differences, some of them important, some of them maybe more of a novelty, but yeah, don't just charge headlong into it. But there's a lot of people that have various different levels of experience with it, and at the price point, particularly on the entry level stuff, it's almost so cheap that you can't help but give it a try.
Exactly. And, there's a fair number of Motorola users out there, especially for those that jumped into DMR when DMR was first introduced in amateur community, because there weren't many alternatives. All the administrators and repeater owners, going back long before Brandmeister, and it was DMR Mark. I mean, they all owned the high-end Motorola's, and there was a time when it was, you had to jump through a lot of hoops, although you could get help from your Motorola dealer where you bought Motorola radios and getting set up, but it was an exercise. But, if you wanted a Motorola radio and you had to deal with Motorola, and they're not exactly meanies, it's just that they, as Bob described, vetted. I don't know that it's quite the same today as it was then, but you still pay for it. There may be some DMR radios where the dealer will not give you the CPS and will insist that they'll program your radio using the which, just run away from that dealer and that particular model. I mean, there's just all kinds of DMR radios out there, but make sure they're going to operate in the amateur radio band, doing the amateur radio things that you like to do, and that goes back to Bob's suggestion that you can buy just about any of these radios except for Motorola's and maybe a couple other brands from a ham radio vendor or somebody that can, is savvy on the amateur side. But not all are that way. Alrighty. So, what about the DMR guys that now want to take care of or take advantage of the 4K transcoding, or however they believe they want to slide on over to the D-Star side. Are there any considerations or worries that the DMR guys should have in learning about D-Star and how it is that they get to D-Star reflectors that'll transcode and you know, their DMR to D-Star? There was a couple stations that I heard earlier today in the Constellation that, and one of them was I think a long time DMR user and was just now experiencing D-Star connecting to this Constellation using 313A. Any consideration that, hang on. And I'll ask this of Bob to start, if he doesn't mind. Anything that, you know, DMR guys that have never been on D-Star ought to think about or know about when approaching transcoding and starting to talk to guys on D-Star that they never talked to before. W6KD, go ahead.
Yeah, you know, for guys that are playing around with the transcoding, well, there's two things. First of all, the XLX reflectors, leaving D-Star aside for a minute, what's new, one of the things that's really new and really kind of game-changing in the DMR world is that the XLX reflectors now present the opportunity for individuals to set up their own infrastructure very inexpensively, just like we did with the X reflectors and are doing with the X reflectors in D-Star. So you can set up an XLX reflector and without doing anything special, you go download the software and put it up on a $3 or $4 a month virtual private server on a service like Vultr.com or a little bit more on. You can actually use the Amazon cloud for for a total of about $5 or $6 a month, and that without D-Star at all, that functions as a independent DMR master server. So if you and your club want to be able to have a hangout to get together and talk on, that's a very, very easy way of setting it up. You're not dependent on the Brandmeister system. You're not dependent on the DMARC guys. You're not dependent on the DMR Plus system. You have your own private. When I say private, I mean privately operated reflector. That DMR guys can talk back and forth to each other. Right? A XLX reflector can have up to 26 talk groups, 4001 to 4026, and if they're not going to play the transcoding piece of it, they can talk amongst each other on those 26 talk groups, just like they were on Brandmeister, just like they were on any of the other DMR systems, except they own the infrastructure. And they make the rules for themselves and they change hands. Now the transcoding piece, I think I've talked to probably 15 or 20 people in the last month, DMR guys that is, that have never heard. In fact, a couple of them have been very unflattering towards D-Star in the past, and the comments are pretty positive about, they really didn't have any idea that the radios and the infrastructure was capable of doing what it does, which is put a digital, high quality digital signal into their radio. It doesn't sound really any different than what's coming from another DMR user. So what they can't do though is they can't navigate around in the D-Star system through these transcoders. They're limited. They have to go to a XLX that's got the transcoder on it, and then they can get onto a particular place, a particular reflector and module, or in our case, a reflector, or I should say, the Constellation reflectors that are all linked together, but they can't, with their DMR radio, say, let me go see what's happening on REF30 Charlie, and then let me go see what's happening on XRF00 6, Charlie, or DCS6 Bravo, or whatever. They can't navigate around inside our being the D-Star world infrastructure the same way that a D-Star user can. They can go to certain nodes and places and be able to talk to us in those places, but they can't just navigate around at will in the D-Star system. So when you're talking to a D-Star guy, make sure, or I'm sorry, to a DMR guy, if you're, if they're new to it, you might try explaining to them what else is out there in the D-Star world that they can't see through that portal that they're on, because they're looking through a soda straw. They're able to talk to us on that transcoded, channel, but what they can't see is the rest of the D-Star world. And once we've got the foot in the door, so to speak, and say, oh, by the way, there are hundreds of reflectors and modules that we can move around. We can move around between those at will with our radios without having to program anything in them, like a lot of the DMR infrastructure requires. Let me change hands one last time. I need to do some thumb exercises here or something. Anyway, one of the downsides of the DMR radios is that a lot of where you can go and what you can do, not everything, but a lot of it is constrained somewhat by the fact that it has to be programmed ahead of time into the radio. As we were talking about earlier, there are things you can do with a keypad-enabled DMR radio in terms of moving around, talk group to talk group on some of the systems, but it's still not as flexible as what we're able to do in the D-Star world, particularly if you have a gateway and a radio with a DTMF pad on it. I can go to any reflector in the D-Star world with my 6-year-old ICOM 92 just by hitting 4 or 5 buttons on the front of the radio. That's not something you can do in DMR. You might be able to go to any talk group on a particular system, but there are a lot of places that you might not be able to go. So anyway, when you're talking to a DMR guy, sort of the takeaways, the things that, if I'm trying to show it off to them is that, it's almost the same codec. I mean, the bit rates between AMBI and AMBI and AMBI plus 2 are there's only a 50 bit per second difference. One's 2400, one's 2450. There's a lot of hype and BS out there about how the DMR codec is so much greater and so much more advanced, and it's not true. They're very, very close to each other, and once DMR guys see that, particularly through the transcoder, it's always helpful, I think, to point out that there's a whole world on the other side of that transcoder that you can't even get to with just a DMR radio, and maybe we'll get some people interested in the other part of digital radio. And for us D-Star guys, there's a whole world out there on the Brandmeister servers that if you've never been on there, there's a whole teeming community there that has popped up just in the last couple of years, and it's they broke away from the tyranny of DMR Mark, and they're doing some pretty amazing things over there. So, the great convergence is here. It's a good thing, I think, and much to happen in the future. And with that, I will quit and send it back. W6K.
All right, we just had some doubling going on. I want to let all that clear out. I've got VK4TUX and N1DOT, and I was going to call for questions and comments, but no need to. We already have stations ready to go. First to Adrian, VK4TUX.
Okay, Mike, I wasn't sure if Bob had finished because he dropped out here, but there was nothing going on. I just wanted to just to key up just to make a comment. So I did that quickly there. I'm not sure if Bob's finished his over, but he dropped out here for a moment. And I put a comment on the round table there that also noticed connecting to 555 Alpha, the audio seemed to be fairly warbly here, but much better clarity on 002 Alpha, just for a bit of feedback. And also I put a link up to the XLX host.txt file, which my system generates here daily on Crontab automatically from Luke's. Only consists of the DMR capable XLX. Don contacted me earlier on today. They had 212, and I think Don's on here. And I responded to Don's email just to clarify, but I looked at Don's XLX reflector, and I think it's a version 1.38, the earlier non-DMR type. So for that reason, it won't be in Luke's list. So if it's not in Luke's list, it doesn't end up in mine, or the one that's for the G4KLX format. And there is a script now for the in the program to create the script within the DMR Gateway software. Now there was an issue with the script. Another guy in the UK detected the same issue with it that I have. I don't think it's been fixed yet on GitHub, but in any case, people can obtain the file from that link I just posted. But I just wanted to see if Don could make a comment, WB5KU, on if he received my email and if he understood the situation about 212, why it sort of doesn't belong on that list of the main Connect Control, VK4TUX.
WB5.
All right, Adrian. And Don just keyed up, so he heard your question. And just so you know, Adrian, you're having a minor amount of packet loss. It's not enough to not understand anything. It's just, been chopping a few syllables, but it's just there, but nothing dramatic. WB5EKU, go ahead.
Yeah, real quick. VK4TUX. I did receive your email, and I got very busy today. I'm going to respond. Thank you very much. I'll let you know in the email. But thank you very much. And I guess when I read your email, I realized that also. Okay. Good to hear you, Adrian. I hope everything is well down there. And today's WB5EK.
All right, Don, thanks for weighing in. Adrian, I got you again, but we have N1DOT just ahead. N1DOT, go ahead. Ken, I saw you key up. Did you want in to talk, or was it just one of those key ups that we catch here on the log? N1DOT, go ahead.
I thought I'd just say howdy to you, Mike, to the 1 Hotel November.
01HN recognized. VK4TUX, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mike. And just some comment back regarding that situation with the XLX reflector. Of course, if people are running the 1.37, there's no harm in updating it to version 2. Even if they only still use it for D-Start, it'll still work just as fine. And as Bob said before, even if you don't have a transcoder and everything, you've got the capability for as a DMR reflector, and DMR users can talk to other DMR users, and D-Star to D-Star as per usual. And it's just really a simple of normally most people use the Git pull page. I'll start again. The GitHub install procedure, which is a Git clone procedure, which means you can update it pretty easily. So it's really just need to go into the into the XLX SRC folder and run a git pull, and then a make clean, then a make install. Just follow the same procedure again, and but do a git pull first to pull in the new source code. So and you can update it like that, Don, and just bring yours up to a version 2. Once you do that, and if your green thumbs up is okay, that calling home.php, if that's okay and you've got a green thumbs up, you'll go into that list. Just a comment on that calling home PHP. What I do with ours is, it's not normally originally in the temporary folder, and if you reboot it gets deleted. But what I do is copy it into the web server, into the web root, and just set the permissions on it, and normally it won't get deleted then. And once it's set there in the configuration PHP file under the PGS, is the path is changed to point to that location, and then after that there's no more issue. But a lot of people have trouble with that, but the red thumbs down on the XLX reflector status because of that calling home PHP.
All right, I think you're done, Adrian, but let me in key just to make sure. Well, it sounded like he ended it, but it was fairly abrupt and no response. So, as with anybody else, if you were still talking or you hear somebody else talking now, just key up during the next break and we'll pick you back up. Sometimes it's not easy to know if you ended appropriately or you got cut off on a timer because it sounded an appropriate conclusion. So, I've got Z01HN and K6KD first. Over to Brian, Z01HN. Go ahead.
Very good there, Mike. Good evening to everybody on the net there. Thought I'd just check in and say howdy. I've got nothing really exciting to report. Just a bit of the same old, same old. The D-Star QSL party went fairly well. It was pretty active. Although there was some bad interference that caused a bit of a crash in my repeater running the DVR PTR, but Reboot fixed that. I've been getting a bit of that with some of these devices lately. But I guess that's a part of experimentation. I gave out a few numbers, but I didn't take part in the QSO party myself. But it certainly brings a lot of interest, and it certainly proves there's a lot of listeners. There was sort of pile up after pile up going on, which I guess from the point of view of stations to work was very good. So with that, I'll put it back to you. Over.
Well, I'm glad you had fun. No one else seemed to participate in it that had fun, that were willing to key up to say so. So what kind of interference are you talking about? I think you said there were some devices, but what were you talking about as far as interference causing the crash? Z01HN, go ahead.
Well, that's a good question. I don't really know, but it was very garbled sort of data, noise, unintelligible rubbish that streamed through that caused it to crash. We did have quite a bit of it. It sort of survived a few of them, but then at some point it caused the problem. My system had been up for 69 days since we last did something to it. So we took the opportunity to do the updates that was available and a reboot, and it's been working fine ever since. It appears to me to be some of these modem type devices that get themselves a bit confused in the data that they're putting out. It's probably operator error, truth be known. Some settings not right somewhere perhaps. Over.
Well, that's unfortunate, but, you know, a good reboot many times solves a lot of problems. I appreciate you being with us. K6KD, go ahead.
Okay, good evening, Mike. Again, I've just got a couple of things. One thing I was just going to comment on, Adrian moving the calling home PHP, out of the /TMP, for obvious reasons, being flushed on a reboot. But instead of putting it in the in the document root, the there /www/db/PGS, the only potential issue there is if there's a dashboard update and you don't remember to take care of that calling home PHP, you could wipe it out. So what I typically do is I'll put it, instead of /temp, I'll make a directory called it'll be /call home, and then I'll give it the appropriate permissions and then change the path statement and config.inc.php to point to that. And that way, if I need to install a new dashboard, I don't have to worry about messing up that hash file, and if the system reboots, I don't have to worry about that either. Just a little variation. I was going to make a comment on a different topic regarding radio programming files or code plugs, but let me. I can either do that now or when there's a next topic. So back to you in the meantime, Mike.
Well, I don't think anybody anybody has any further comments on that, and certainly they can key up if they'd like to. So go ahead and talk about code plugs if you choose to. Go ahead, K6KD, go ahead.
Okay, well, I'll call them. Let me just make sure I got on the. I couldn't hear myself on the other radio. I prefer to call them radio programming files. I don't like that name, code plugs, but I guess it's an old Motorola term. There's a folder that's on the roundtable in the Open Digital System file sharing and how to, and this has been brought up before, and it's never gotten a whole lot of traction. And maybe because when we think about programming radios, we think about the repeaters and all the kinds of things that are unique to a particular location. But I just wanted to toss out the possibility of, having some sort of user-to-user sharing. Maybe a user could say, I've got I'm running an open spot. I've got an MD380, and maybe even say what my current hotspot frequency is, such and such, or maybe leave that out, but getting a programming file and having to put the radio frequencies in, that would be a lot easier than programming everything from scratch. And maybe even let me reset real quick. Maybe even a sort of a one-size-fits-all radio programming file that has some programming for OpenSpot, programming for DMR Gateway, with XLX, programming with a few Brandmeister, maybe a few popular Brandmeister talk groups, realizing that it won't be all complete, but maybe enough to get someone started. Somebody could probably it'd be a user-to-user type of thing. Someone says, I've got such and such a radio. Maybe a current hotspot is on a particular frequency. Could somebody whip together a file and just sort of have user-to-user sharing? Anyway, just a thought. Back to that.
Well, that's something to think about. The most radio programming files, code plugs, are model dependent. And in the repositories of code plugs, because that's what they call them, but I understand that, that's not how you'd like to call it, and I understand that some people do not believe in code plugs, radio programming files, but they're there, and they're popular. When you look at the repositories, it's model by model by model by model, and so you got a list of code plugs is say for system, DMR system A or whatever the system is that you're providing them for. And then you got one guy that's got, let's say, the Motorola, and he'll provide several code plugs for each of the models that he may own, and somebody throws up a Titera. And then, of course, you've got all these different models, same thing with CSI and others. So I see that as a difficulty in the sense that I don't think there would be a radio programming file generic yet enough to make them usable across various models in addition to makes, because the CPSs are wildly different, even though they do use the same terminology. That's just, an observation I have. But let's find out what everybody else thinks. Is this something that would be popular, usable, practical, of interest? Let's hear you about that. Let's hear from you. Stations, please key up. KG5TNK, go ahead.
All right, yeah, that's actually, it was just had like a forum thread where people could post what they have available. You can go there and look and see what there is. But I actually did just that. I'm on a Facebook page for the Houston area digital radio, and the guy was asking about it. It was the exact same setup I have. I put together a small code plug for the ND 2017 on the open spot. Sent it to him. He just has to enter, his DMR ID, call sign, that info, and he was up and running. And from that, since then, he's able to figure out how it's actually put together. The talk groups, the zones, all that. That was confusing for me to begin with. But just getting a code plug from someone, you can figure out how to add the other stations you want, the other reflectors you want, all of that. It was it was something I didn't have when figuring it out, and it helped him. Much quicker, much easier for him to figure it out once he had a basic code plug. It's only because we got together through the Facebook group. He was posted that he's having trouble doing it, and I just came back and gave him a plug. But within the form, if there was code plugs, well, the name of this thread is this hotspot, this radio, or whatever. And, throw up what you have available. The people can look. If it's not there, it's not there. But if it is, perfect. It's a good way to get started. When someone's brand new to it, going from D-Star to DMR, programming the code plug was a pain in the rear, trying to figure out how to do it. We're just having that basic, even if it is for that model, for that hotspot, or for 4 repeaters or whatever, just having a very small code plug helps you figure out how to do it for yourself after that.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Rather than having a, formalized, tested, tried and true, here's the code plug for this specific area, system, use whatever, guys instead will just post what they have, and it's up to you to decide. I mean, there's no guarantees. But that also means that it's going to be a community contribution, not just Mr. Code Plug or Mr. Radio Programming File that, validates, and the webmaster doesn't allow it to be posted until it's been cleared up and there's a change log and stuff. That isn't what you're talking about then. So if somebody is willing to do that, and assuming that you can import it into your CPS and check it out, you could always say, yeah, this isn't for me, or, thank God I'm going to get some help here. And that's true for both DMR as well as D-Star code plugs, although, there isn't CPSs that are, out there strangling the D-Star side. But on the other hand, there's a purpose for them, and the radios are the way they are, and the CPSs are the way they are. And as long as you take the time with or without a code plug, to understand your radio's programming, even if you use somebody else's thoughts about programming as a starter. You just can't say, okay, it's working now. Understanding these little nuances, especially involving, for example, the receive group thing, that isn't always evident about how you set up the receive groups within the CPS, and having to, tell your talk groups, your group calls, that this is you have a receive group there as well. You just can't. Well, you guys, it's already gone over it. I don't know why I'm getting into this. Good idea. Enough from me. I want to hear from you. Stations, please key up.
VK4TUX.
VK4TUX, go ahead.
Okay, Mike, there's a lot of dropouts on the system tonight. I'm not sure what's happening there, but it seems to be happening to everybody. But I was just going to comment regarding a DMR code plug channel. There's no need to set up a receive group at all if you don't want to hear anything other than the TX group call contact that you're using. So if you set up one for talk group 9, you can just leave the receive group at none if you just want to hear the traffic that's on talk group 9, because it'll follow the TX setting. The only real reason to set the RX group is if you want to hear other talk groups other than the TX setting. As talked about before, for a linking contact or something like that. But there's no need to set RX groups or contacts on every in a code plug on DMR.
Okay, I don't know if you heard me last time, Adrian, but every time that you transmitted, you've had packet loss with your signal. Nothing that, caused us to lose anything other than pieces of words, syllables, but, I've got you showing up in the call history with multiple TFs, which indicates packet loss, plus I'm showing packet loss. Just FYI, as you, go through the different reflectors and perhaps are having some audio difficulty hearing it, you might consider it could be on your end. But got it. Thank you. All right. Thoughts on having a generic code plug repository? You take it or leave it. They'll post with the purpose and the model and the make, and if you can put it to use, you can. If you don't think it's worthwhile, you don't have to. Is this something that would be of interest to anyone? Nobody should go to any trouble if something doesn't, attract users or no interest. Comments? Please key up. K6KD, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to comment. That's a good idea, the station, about making available what you currently have, and I think that would be one option. The other thing, which is what I had in mind with that folder, was a user asking for help on a particular thing. So it can work both ways, and some people have making available what they have. Some sometimes asking for help, and yes, it would be specific by model, but there aren't that many. I mean, there's I think the MD380 and 390 will use the same file. Possibly even the MD2017. I'm not sure. That is dual band. I'm not sure if that would or wouldn't. But and the Terra, the TR7400 would be a different one. There's a few, but they're not that many different models around. So I think it just I think it'd just be one way to kind of spread out, and just as the other station said, helping someone get started, because once you have those different things programmed, it's a lot easier to add to it than sit there with a blank page. Back to Nick.
Oh, agreed. And depending upon the mode, sometimes you have to understand that, well, at least with DMR, you've got to replace their call sign with yours and your DMR ID with yours. And, there's going to be some things that you're going to need to change. And, of course, your CPS has to willingly, upload, I guess, upload and translate no translations. Keep it straight. If your CPS will not accept the code plug, then you pretty much have to stop. Assuming that you're following the manufacturer's steps in uploading programming from some other device anyway, you guys know what I'm talking about. D-Star's a bit different. But it would be buyer beware, user beware. Here's what I've got. Here's what perhaps there's been some attempt by the manufacturers to be consistent in their CPS through model changes and various differences in models. Sometimes a model number is really the same radio, just with or without something that you may or may not want, keeping in mind that it's manufactured for industrial commercial purposes primarily. I don't think there's a DMR maker that is amateur radio only. I'm not sure that would be a smart move, but still, it could be. So, and there are a lot of, you go to Amazon, as Bob described, especially if you end up in Alibaba or, one of the many volume sellers out of Tokyo. There are some makes, models, names I have never heard of, and when you go back there the next day, there's new models and makes and stuff, and prices change. So, a lot out there. Of course, if it's cheap enough, you can buy a box, and if thing stops working, you just fling it in the dumpster and grab a new one out of your case by it. So. Any further thoughts? And John does have something set up. He did make a point of this, and I failed to note it, that in the Open Digital System File Sharing category, you've got a list of boards, and the first one up with, not surprisingly, no post yet, are radio programming files. Of course, aka code plugs. And access point files, and that would be the place to give it a start if people have any interest in this. I would hope that perhaps some would try contributing to it. It's not like if there's anything wrong with it, you're going to be chewed out, because this is not a vetted, board. And I was going to call for stations with further comments or thoughts on this. Maybe there's a better way to go about it. And there's KG5TNK. Beat me to the punch. Go ahead.
All right. It's not just about code plugs. The specific radio, you're going to use the open spot this way. You're going to use it with a repeater that way. But if you have, like I have the MD2017, how do you load the DMR Mark ID database on it so when someone keys, their information pops up on screen? That's not well explained anywhere. Something like that can also be shared there. Other little tips and tricks with those for, all these different DMR radios, not just code plugs and such.
Well, we could do that. That would make for quite a busy board or folder. I'm not sure if you'd want to upload the entirety of the DMR Mark or Brandmeister contact list. I don't believe that's required in order to at least do what we're doing here. Certainly, if you're going to be operating on DMR only, having at least the people that you normally communicate with programmed in your radio. Some radios you can do it on the fly. So that is, add DMR IDs to your radio that would then update the CPS when you sync your radio, however that may happen by cable or Bluetooth or whatever. You know, there in the Motive Turbo and some of the other groups, finding software that will allow you to just download a list of contacts and then upload them to your radio is an ongoing debate. Although some of the DMR groups provide the ability to download a segment of calls that is DMR IDs and call signs. But it's really an issue of the capacity, that is how many, how much memory and space and that is channel. Well, I'm not sure how to describe the DMR memory, but in your contact list, some radios are limited. You can't put 10,000 contacts in a 1,000 contact radio and vice versa. And, plus sometimes the CPR limits the amount of contacts you can hold. But the idea makes sense. But the contacts, man, we could carry on if we were a DMR net, which we're not, all night about the best way to upload all the contacts in the world that you would want. And there are sometimes third-party programs you need to use anyway. It goes on, and you'll run into it the more time you spend on DMR, just as you learn all about reflectors and hotspots as you progress within D-Star. Further comments? Please key up. K6KD, go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to mention to the other station, I think that is an excellent idea. I don't think he was referring to loading whole big databases onto the roundtable forum. I think he was talking about pointers, possibly links. And so I think that's an excellent idea. It can be complicated. There could be variations. That's what a roundtable forum is good for, having threads and messages and how to. So, I think we could think about all the different constraints that could be there, but I just want to say I think it's an excellent idea, and I'll leave it at that.
Fair enough. Stations, please key up. Well, don't let me put the damper on anything. Sometimes I get carried away because, I have opinions and thoughts about things, but sometimes they end up, being viewed as this is the way it's going to be on the Roundtable Forum Board. No. You can put it to the best use that you like. So, and the way our forum board is set up, it's well organized, and even if it gets a little carried away, the administrators can certainly move things around so that they're, in places that make sense and can help you keep things sensible. But the more the merrier. It looks like there's a lot there, but there can sure be a lot more. All right, any further on the basics of hardware setup, radio purchases, programming files, putting them in the Roundtable Forum Board under Open Digital Systems, or anything else that you've heard thus far? Questions, comments? You can even make criticisms. Nobody takes offense here. If you do, you're going to hear from me. Stations, please key up. All right, that takes care of that. So at this point, what is it that you wanted to ask or talk about that we haven't talked about yet tonight that would be something worthy of consideration? We're probably creeping towards concluding this edition of the Thursday Night D-Star Roundtable, but that doesn't mean we're done. It just means that we could be done. So, what do you have? Please key up now. Well, nothing sooner heard. There's been a number of posts in the shout box, and I appreciate those stations that have helped us out by putting it there because it stays for a very long time. As you guys know, the shop box has always moved to the shop box history, is always available. And there's been a number of other contributions to the forum board. You're welcome to take a look or comment on it. At this point, let me see if there is anything further for the roundtable before we consider closing. Stations, please key up.
ZL2DRM.
ZL2DRM. Go ahead.
Yeah, good day, Mike. The name's David. I've not been listening for a while. Tonight's the first time I've actually been able to listen for a wee while. I've noticed that there's a lot of talk about DMR on the D-Star rounds table. I'm just wondering why there's such a focus on that different system when this is supposed to be a D-Star round table. Just curious to know why that's the case. Over.
Well, if you have been listening, that would be understandable, and it's just this. D-Star is D-Star, and there are other open digital modes, and by that I mean open system digital modes. And we've said from the beginning that, well, not from the very beginning, this roundtable has been running for more than 10 years, but DMR wasn't even on anybody's lips when we started on D-Star. But as this convergence of open system, open source digital modes takes place, which is what is happening, D-Star can talk to DMR, and DMR can talk to D-Star. And fairly unique to this roundtable and its constellation of X reflectors that is part of the Kings of Digital system is a DMR to D-Star, D-Star to DMR transcoder that is about as perfect as you can get. It allows DMR-enabled stations to talk on D-Star, and D-Star-enabled stations to talk on DMR and talk to each other. So this net, as well as many other D-Star nets, at least those that began as solely D-Star nets, which this one was, and probably will continue to be called a D-Star net just for purposes of identity, has by necessity needed to talk about the digital modes, not just D-Star, but including D-Star and DMR and Fusion and others, because as time progresses, you have one radio in one mode and you'll be able to talk to all the others. That's how we see the future. So thus, time is spent talking about DMR for those that are on D-Star and don't know much about DMR, and vice versa. That's in a nutshell. Otherwise, I have to take up probably about 4 hours of net time to run down all the activity that and the fun topics and discussions we've had on this specific point. ZL2DRM, go ahead.
Yeah, cheers, thanks for that. Just from my point of view, D-Star is the superior system, so I don't see any value in encouraging people to use DMR by actually trying to make things compatible with that inferior system. So that's just my point of view. Others might have a different view, and I'll just leave it there. Up to DRM, back to the control. Have a good evening, mate. Cheers.
All right, just want to check though real quick. It looked like you had David there, ZL2DRM. You're not in QRZ. Is there a reason for that? Or is the call sign not showing correctly on your radio? Back to you.
My call sign is ZL2 Delta Romeo Mike. That's what's in my radio. Over.
All right, no, that's fine. I just was going to add you to the log, and you're not in QRZ by call sign. Is there a reason for that? I mean, well, you don't have to answer that. It's none of my business. I just thought I'd comment the fact that I can't find you in QRZ, which is pretty odd. So I just didn't want to get your call sign or anything else screwed up. Sometimes, you end up, we all do it. We get dyslexic sometimes in putting entries into our, my call and your call. So, very good. All right, David. Appreciate the question. Sorry I couldn't spend much time on the answer because, well, if you want, download some of the podcasts and give a listen, especially those over the last couple of months, and you'll learn exactly why we even breathe the word DMR when in years past you could get shot for even talking about anything other than D-Star. Times have changed. Stations, please, Kia. I'm sorry, guys. K6KD and W6KD are on the list. K6KD, go ahead.
Okay, well, I wanted to mention to David in New Zealand that, I think a lot of us are really pro D-Star, but you can't escape the fact that there are a lot of DMR radios and with excellent quality, much cheaper, and that is another way, aside from using the DMR specific features, that is another way of getting into the constellation. And you can't fight that. You got these radios for sub $90 that sound very good. In fact, my DMR radios generally sound superior to my D-Star radios just because of the way not because DMR is a better mode per se, but the radios happen to be manufactured to better specs for commercial environment. The other thing is, if you haven't been listening for a while, we have what we call 4K transcoding, which is a hardware-based transcoding, which we feel is unique compared to other transcoding attempts, where it's not just a matter of being able to understand, but it's you don't know the difference. So anyway, those are a couple of the reasons. Back to net, K6KD.
Thanks for adding to that, John. W6KD, go ahead.
Yeah, John hit most of what I was going to say. Mostly the pricing pressure. Even if the radios were markedly inferior to the D-Star radios, which they really aren't, the fact that you can buy 6 MD380s for less than the cost of one Kenwood D74 is pretty hard to look past. And then when you consider that the radio actually does sound good and actually does function pretty well, we can either pretend that's not that significant pricing gradient doesn't exist, in which case we're going to get our clocks clean. We're going to look around and go, where'd everybody go here in a short period? Or and by the way, we always want to attract new folks too. And in addition to the fact that anybody that does the comparison is going to be severely pressured to go, to make the obvious economic choice. We also easily reachable by folks that maybe haven't been before. A lot of the reason that a lot of folks have never gotten into digital radios because of the high price of entry. And so if we can, break that barrier down, I think we're doing something good as well. But bottom line, though, is that those radios are out there. More and more people are using them. The siren's call of that low price tag is a force to be reckoned with, and so here we are. And I spend a lot of time still working on infrastructure that I don't do anything that's strictly DMR related. Pretty much all of the time I spend behind the scenes doing programming for reflectors and all the work we did to get the transcoder up and running. That's it may touch on DMR, but it's still focused largely on D-Star. So we haven't given up on it by any stretch. We want to see both camps kind of together, because if we got to pick between one or the other, the economics are going to drive everything in DMR. So we want to keep them both alive. So back to the net, W6KD.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. And as people who have been listening to this net for quite a while, they know my feeling. I love D-Star. I don't dislike DMR, at least not anymore. But the focus will always be on D-Star. This is a D-Star net, but we have to talk about, just as both John and Bob described, the future, and we're trying, and I think we're doing a pretty damn good job of staying ahead of the curve and trying to offer as much as we can to as many people as we can for the right reasons, using equipment and software and technology and just a lot of volunteer time to make it work right. You rarely hear us, boast about, we got all these great things coming up. It's either we have it or we don't. But there's a lot of exciting stuff around the corner, and I'd like to think that it begins here on D-Star, and we're just simply, opening our arms to the other digital modes now that they have become open. That is, that they're not